Ambient noise, yeah.
So now you're grabbing some band lab clips.
Yeah.
Now for me, that would also be something where I would use like volume automation and like bring that from the bottom, like bring it in and then bring it back out. Kind of.
And these are the kinds of sounds you can scratch. With this AI, like scratching it actually can be cool.
Oh, that was perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the right
I
spot.
didn't even notice 40. Realize the texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way.
Hello, my friend. It's good to see you again.
Once again, how you doing?
Oh, that one was fitting.
I like it. It's always a good one. Welcome everybody. Good to see you again. Another week of talking IT with Glenn and Tony. We've got a bunch of stuff lined up tonight, and we'll get into what everything is in a couple minutes here. But figured it's always good to welcome everybody and see how the summer's going. How hot is it by you? I mean, you're up north, so it shouldn't be as hot. But down here, it's been in the mid 90s today, so it's been pretty toasty.
Actually, the last couple of days has been surprisingly cool. Got a lot of rain, and the heat went with it.
Yeah, lucky you, man.
And
Gotta take some
unfortunately,
of that gold.
the power went with it too last night for like half the day.
That's true. And like you were saying, when I lose power, I just can just grab the acoustic or even just grab my electric not plugged in and just kind of noodle around. But with keyboard, it doesn't really have the same kind of effect.
Yeah.
You really need a keyboard that you can either run on batteries or have some kind of backup power solution to get that going while you're out.
Oh, you just reminded me. I do have a keyboard that runs on batteries.
No, I was gonna imagine this
Ah.
one does. This one I use here, the Casio. I mean, I can slap batteries in there, so just flip it over and see what it's got.
Well, next time the power goes out, I'm going to have that locked and loaded.
Exactly. And then at least throw some headphones on, or it even has speakers built in. Like this one has speakers built in, so even if I had nothing, I could just throw batteries in it and be able to hear it, at a campfire or whatever. So that would work. And they put on like the nice nylon 12-string sound and just kind of go with that. Noodle some chords. That always works out nice. The other question was we were going to dive into at some point tonight the types of musical styles that are out there, some of the most popular musical styles and genres that are out there, to see kind of what the stats are.
Yeah.
Like who likes what and in what amounts do they like them.
We're going to actually start with something really interesting tonight, a little different than what we usually do, but with this one, is this the right? Where is it? There we go. This is a site that I actually found when you were off a couple weeks ago. And when I was looking for Billboard, Billboard information and what it takes to make a hit for Billboard, I came across this site because they had a data analysis of like all the Billboard hits from like 1969 till 2023. And you could see each week as the data changed, the way this guy puts together the analytics. It's so awesome to watch. In 5-10 minutes, you can really see how data moves. And I know you're going to like this site because you're like me. Data is beautiful.
I mean, I like it already from the title. I mean, just, the name of the channel alone gets me. I'm already there because I agree. I mean, statistics, data, like that all points the way to, see trends, as you mentioned. And, being able to visualize those trends in a concise way is important. And that's one thing. If this is a site that's good at that, which we're about to find out, or I'm about to find out, it sounds like it already
You're going to
is.
love
I
the
will
way
love it.
he does it. And I mean, it's not just music. Like he analyzes all sorts of data, movies, entertainment.
Yep.
But the music data is incredible to watch when you're wondering, like, where are we going? What is going to be the big genres in the 2020s to the 2030s? This goes from 1910 to 2019. So if we look at these trends, we should get an idea of where we're going in the last couple of years.
Trying to project.
Yeah. So
then again, we there could be some big changes coming with AI, and I mean, AI is just on the tip. So all of a sudden, there could be a whole blast of AI music coming out. Coming soon to a website near you.
Well, and I bet you, even if the AI is making the music, it's still going to follow these genre trends, because some of these genre trends, they happen because of the environment. As we look from 1919 throughout the 20th century, there's going to be a reason why certain genres start to take over. Electronic instruments come into play throughout that. So this will be interesting to see. Whoa. I'm going to bring the volume down on this because it's really more about the visuals.
Yeah. Time is, time sliding by there. So you can see that as time goes by, what's jumping to the top? Marches and ragtime dropping. See, this should we be betting on this?
I know. I would.
Country shows up out of nowhere.
Well, look, in 1917, I mean, country started really coming in that early.
And dominating.
And see, in the 20s, I would have expected band, you know, jazz, swing, like that stuff in the 20s, the Roaring 20s.
The Roaring 20s, yeah. You get the flappers and all that. So I mean, yeah, that should be coming up.
Interesting to see.
Polka at the bottom. Come on, polka, you can do it.
Oh, they pulled polka out. Classical made a comeback though.
And jazz takes up. Oh, there's jazz coming at you.
It's interesting to see tango in there during this time.
Again, it probably comes down to like a particular hot song or a particular hot artist at that time that started, you know, going crazy.
Look at that jazz. Look at jazz in the 30s.
Go jazz, go jazz.
That's like Michael Jackson. When we were looking at the Billboard one, Michael Jackson did that in the 70s. Oh, now country's suffering because jazz is eating it all up.
Market share done. Yep. Oh, rumba, rumba coming in. Polka makes a comeback.
Wow, look at what ragtime's doing too.
Yeah.
I'm
trying to remember when.
I'm really surprised about Hindustani. It goes to show you, well, it goes to show you the influence of that side of the world in music. It's still hanging in there. Here,
musical showed up.
Country comes back with a vengeance. Fuck you, jazz.
Mid 40s now, yeah, 1945.
And you know, like,
oh, here comes R&B. Oh, look out! Here comes.
And you know, rock is going to just come in and smash. Chanson. Now, what is Chanson?
The mambo comes in. Chanson's about to become irrelevant pretty soon. Cool jazz, rockabilly. Uh-oh. First appearance of the word rock. R&B took over.
See, now this is what led to Motown.
Oh, pop rock, and then...
Wow.
See ya.
What did I tell you? Now that's a rock.
1956, just gone.
It just rolled its way in. Oh, soul. Again, the Motown sound started in the 50s. And
rock, sure. Now we're into the low 60s here. Uh-oh. Soul took over.
Well, and you see the evolution of rock from the early rock and roll to the pop rock.
And then we should be getting rock with soul influences since soul took over.
Oh, look at funk.
Oh, the
Pre-70s.
Funk.
Look at funk going into the 70s.
Yeah. Classic rock makes its appearance and dominates.
For a good decade.
Up there having a fight with funk and country.
Oh, disco. Who would have thunk it?
See ya.
Where did that come from?
Coming up the outside.
Wow. And, you know,
to the top.
Disco really did dominate for a couple of years there.
75 here. Yep. Thinking about the songs that are coming out at those times for sure. New wave. Techno.
Yeah, you're starting to see the synth influence here in the 70s.
Techno pop kicking in. Classic rock. Trying to hold strong.
Blondie. You can thank her for that.
True. Oh, Latin coming up.
Yeah, you see a lot more of the synth-based genres here.
House.
Punk.
Indie rock.
And punk actually does get stronger in the 90s.
Eurodance, there you go, 88.
Alternate rock creeping its way in. And indie rock and alternate rock, I mean, aren't they kind of the same?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the definition, differences would be for sure. I could identify a song from one or the other.
They're almost moving in parallel too.
hip hop and rap coming up.
See, I'm really surprised hip hop wasn't dominating more towards the end of the 80s.
At the end of the 90s now, 2000.
Well, into the 2000s, you know, hip hop is like, look at what it's doing.
Yep. And look how close they all are, though. Covering a lot of ground with that top 5, top 6.
I'm really surprised with the house.
That's the other question, is the data source in terms of, I'm assuming this is like Billboard charts or whatever, like some kind of a charts thing in terms of how we're coming up with the numbers or the prevalence of each of these. Techno pop's barely hanging on. "2013, country making a comeback."
Yeah, well, country's good like that. Country goes in cycles.
Everything goes in cycles, really. "2018. Latin and deep house fighting it out for the bottom. Up to Q3 2019. Data is beautiful. And again, the way you look at it and the way you have the timeline set, all those types of things make a big difference. Very cool stuff, though. There we go. Data is beautiful. Tony's having some camera issues here, but we'll get him right back. Bam. 1911 Q1. And it's giving us the data here. The timeline history. Why don't we put Tony back on the stage and then we'll talk about it. Hello.
I'm back. There we go.
Much better.
So he does mention how the numbers are relative to each other to reflect popularity change throughout the years.
Yeah, not a percentage. Yeah. Using subgenres in most cases. Yeah. You know, because that's the thing is, you know, at certain points, like it just says rock, boom, and it took over everything. If you kept all the subgenres of rock together, then you wouldn't see the way things split out and the horse race that ensued. Very cool, though. I like the way that it breaks it all out quarter by quarter over the years.
Yeah, and I mean, apparently he's doing this kind of as a student. You know, he's a data geek who loves visualizations. My kind of guy.
Exactly. And that's the thing is the way you present the data can be, you know, can be critical, and in the way that, you know, you see things and the way things come around. And, you know, looks like Joe agrees with us there over on YouTube. He likes the chart.
Yeah. We will look at more of these charts throughout the future. The musical data that he goes through, fascinating information. Like, given where it left off, what do you think? What genre do you think is really gonna dominate the next couple of years? Where do we go from here?
And that was what I was thinking before. It's like, it's hard to project in terms of where you could go, because, you know, a new genre could show up tomorrow with a hit song that, you know, takes that entire subgenre, like just before, like takes it to the end of the charts, like takes over everything. And then, you know, everything starts to sift out from there. Or it could be that, you know, one of the tried and true genres that's already out there has the hit come out and really, you know, run away with the race, so to speak. It's hard to say, you know, but I'm just thinking that as AI comes around and as things seem to be, you know, accelerating at such a pace that it's harder and harder to anticipate further into the future at this point. You know, even just a short distance in the future, so much can change that it's hard to really jump ahead even further and get anything useful out of that data.
Yeah, see, normally I would say like the culture, the listeners kind of dictate where genres go. But with AI, it's possible we're heading into a future where the AI might push us towards certain genres just because it thinks this is the kind of music to make.
And also the algorithms, I mean, or even just the preferences, where if one particular song happens to go mega viral, you know, it could even be a little stupid video, you know, if it goes mega viral with a song in it, and that song becomes popular all of a sudden, you know, millions if not billions could, like, you know, flock to it all of a sudden, and that really would skew numbers like this in a way that weren't possible back in the 50s or the 20s or the 30s. You know, if you look back far enough, you know,
Well, yeah,
the data was,
go
those days
go
everything was word of mouth, and you know, local.
going viral back then was a different challenge. Like you
Yeah.
saw in the 50s, like rock and roll kind of coming in. Thank Elvis.
And television. I mean, you know, as far as, you know, as far as that goes, being able to reach all those people all at once, everywhere. You know, I mean, newspaper was something that, you know, before that, you know, news got around, but it didn't get around at the speed that news gets around now. I mean, like I can watch, you know, live volcano stuff going on in Iceland or whatever. I mean, there's, you know, the data that we have at our fingertips is just incredible. People back then couldn't even conceive of having that much information at hand. But a lot of times that can get you information overload too, or, you know, if you're only looking at bad news, you know, everything seems negative, everything seems depressing, all of a sudden everything is, you know, gloomy. But if you're only seeing good news, everything seems rosy and happy and everything. But there's, you know, the truth is somewhere in between, where it's
Yeah.
important to understand what they're saying, you know, in Gloomtown, and it's important to know what they're saying in Rainbow Town, and kind of be like, okay, I can see why you think that, and I can see why you think that, but I look at the data and find, you know, make my own decisions as to where on that spectrum of, you know, complete gloom to complete rainbows that everything is, as far as, you know, making sure that I try to stay grounded in reality, but you know, with a scientific view of everything. And with a scientific view, the most important thing that people don't realize, they say, oh, you depend on science, you put your faith in science, this and that. And it's like, well, science is a process. So it's not saying, you know, if somebody says one thing, that doesn't mean that thing is all of a sudden now, oh, that's the truth, and we just all jump in line behind it. In science, for something to become, you know, published and accepted and consensus, means that, you know, all of the, like, not all, but, you know, all of the relevant people in the field had the opportunity to look at the data and try to replicate the data, or look through the data
Well,
themselves and
and
try to
consensus is the key. I mean,
consensus is the key. Yeah.
science depends on consensus, at least in the old days. Now you got some scientists who sometimes try to skirt around consensus and just say this is some kind of rule or law, but it does require consensus amongst other scientists to be accepted.
Now, the other thing is, there are people, you know, there are scientists, like you say, that are not accepted, or they have an opinion or a theory that is not accepted by the consensus or the mainstream. And that doesn't mean that there isn't some merit to what they're doing. You know, that there can be truth in it, there could be merit in it. But if it doesn't pass muster for the community, usually that means that the experiments weren't done in the proper way, or they neglected to take in a lot of account, or they misrepresent or mischaracterize things in the data.
Or
But that's where the data analysis comes into play. So
it's
so much.
something really big to accept. Like the earth is not flat. It's not like we went overnight and started believing the earth was round. It took time. Was it
It also took
Newton with the
evidence. That was
apple?
the thing.
Like gravity, all of that took time to get to a consensus.
And a lot of that came down to, you know, people need to see the evidence for themselves. And in a lot of cases, like with Newton and the apple, like anybody can replicate a gravity experiment at home. Like, take an apple, drop it. Which way does it go? It goes down, right? I mean, that's, you know, anybody on this planet can do that right now, and it's going to work. You know, you can drop an apple and it's going to hit the floor, just because that's the way gravity works. And that's an easily replicatable experiment. But the question was why?
Yeah.
And, you know, because the apple has mass and the earth has mass. And if you look at the point between them, you know, you're actually looking at the midpoint between the center of mass of the earth and the center of mass of that apple. And guess what? That's way in the earth. And, you know, that's where they pull to. And then both the earth and the apple pull towards each other. So the earth is getting pulled to the apple. And when you let go, they both go to each other. But the earth doesn't move very much because it weighs a lot more than the apple does. But, you know, there's just, you know, theories like that. But again, the main point was that, you know, when it comes to consensus, it's not that everybody has to be a sheep and follow along and all of that, but it's more that everybody looks at the data, comes to their own conclusions. And if they all, you know, if more than most tend to agree on something, we've come to a consensus that, yes, that does seem to be the case, because we've looked at the data and we've analyzed it multiple ways. We've looked at what the naysayers said, and we've come to a conclusion.
Yeah. And when
So,
when
yeah,
you're
I mean, I love
talking
data.
when you're talking like the science of music, like what we just saw there, music also falls into consensus.
It's true. And again, you know, the different styles, different choices, different things that become popular at different times, you know, all of that comes around at different times. And it's cyclical, like you had mentioned. You know, like, you know, something will be popular at one point and then it falls out of favor, like disco. You know, I mean, it falls out of favor and then it comes back with a vengeance, and then whatever. Like, you know, maybe now is the time, maybe the 50-year anniversary of the 70s is where where we end up with disco coming back strong in the 20s. Who knows?
Yeah, and you will see some claim musical science. That Billboard night that we had, several of those videos, the topic was like, this is the way to write a hit song for Billboard, and they presented it like musical science, like you follow this recipe, and this is what will lead you to a hit. Even though they consider it a science, it doesn't come with the guarantees that, like, you could write the greatest song, follow that recipe.
You always have to take anything like that with it. Your mileage may vary.
And then you have other parts of musical science where, like, understanding the way frequencies work and behind why an instrument sounds the way it does.
Yep. And why we don't make a Stradivarius violin today, you know? It's like, it has to do with the wood, it has to do with the craftsmanship, it has to do with the impurities, it has to do with a lot of things. But to me, I'm thinking, you know, it's not that you can't make one today, it's that to make one, a lot of things, and things that are environmental as well, with how you actually grow the wood to make a Stradivarius, and then not to mention the craftsmanship that went into it and all of that. But we understand
and
how it was made. So
how many customers you can possibly have if you got to sell it for 10 grand.
Tillion, Stradivarius. Get some really nice.
That's right. We did see somebody play a $10 million violin on one video.
Yep. And that's where you take, you know, the whatever, you know, the $100 violin, the $1,000 violin, the $10,000, and the $100,000, and you see what you can hear between them. And that's the thing to me. Usually, once you get beyond the entry level stuff, where you can, you know, some things are really just kind of slapped together. Once you get beyond that, to where there's actual care in the craftsmanship, there are only so many differences that I can detect between the instruments. But when you really do analyze them on certain scales, you really will see the difference in a lot of the way those things go. Now, one of the videos we were going to talk about first here was going to be how to play a bass like a pro. So this was a channel that we've looked at before, and I think we'll bring the channel up after the video. But this is one of the bass videos that we had, and we will check this one out and come back with the page right after.
So for years now, I have played in the professional music industry, playing with different artists, different wedding bands, worship bands, corporate bands, I mean, you name it. But there's a lot of stuff that I've learned over the years that hasn't been from a teacher. So I had this thought, what are these secrets that professionals know that everybody else doesn't? So today we're gonna be unpacking the ways that pro bass players play that nobody really talks about. And also, if you already play in the pro industry, let me know in the comments if you have anything that I missed in this video. So this is gonna sound very basic, but warming up is an absolute necessity when it comes to playing any type of event, gig, church service, whatever it is. I used to not make this a serious thing when it came to my life. And honestly, the more I progressed, the more that I needed it, and also it showed. Now, the big thing with warming up is to make sure you're warming up your right hand and your left hand, and then both of them together. This could be 3 different exercises, which is honestly what I usually do. And I have a whole video talking about speed exercises. I'll link it up here in the corner or even in the description below. Go check it out and try to find warm-ups that are effective for you, because sometimes these exercises are good for, you know, me or for somebody else, but they may not be the best for you to warm up. So whatever the exercise is, whatever the warm-up is, make sure you have your go-to warm-ups. So now this tip is very revolutionary for me and has been for a while, which is playing transitions. Basically, if you played a song before, you know that there's a verse, there's a chorus, there's another verse, there's a bridge, there's another chorus, you know, there's an instrumental, there's a solo, you know, there's these different sections. What professional musicians know is that you never want any of those sections when you go from one to another to be awkward. And sometimes that can happen. And sometimes it can sound robotic if you're playing live, if you're just sticking to the track and nothing, you know, there's no feel there. So a lot of times what bass players do is they do like a slide. Like a lot of times if they're going to a big chorus or something, you're like a whew, boom, and they go into it. And that's what I call playing a transition. So when you start to learn and like figure out these different transitions, it can help you play your bass in a better way. If any of the musicians are like dazed off into space or something, whenever you do like a cue, like a slide or anything like that, what that does, it tells the band and the artist, hey, we're going to this next section, so come in. All right, now space is king. This is a huge thing that I've learned being in the pro industry. And this is a huge sign of someone who is like seasoned versus someone who is not very seasoned. One of the biggest signs when I go to a concert or anything like that, and I'm listening to an artist and I'm listening to a band, the way I know there's professional musicians in the crew is when I feel and hear space. And what I mean by space is that there's not licks happening every line, or there's not licks happening every second of the song, but you feel and you learn the music, and then you're like, oh man, yeah, that feels good. And then when they do a lick, it's effective and it hits you in the gut, and you're like, ooh, wow, that was sick. That was crazy. But that's something that seasoned musicians know that beginners, intermediates, and people who are not very seasoned don't know. And the reason why that is because the music is the priority and not the musician. When the musician is the priority, then it's all about them. It's all about self. It's all about, oh, I'm gonna play this lick here. But when the music is the priority and somebody's hiring you to do a job to make their band and make their sound good, then the music is the priority. Now, if you sprinkle something here and there, that's great. But the thing is you're taking that self aspect out of it. And that's how you really know a professional understands that space is king. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. So Skillshare is an online learning platform that is a step up from just online videos like here on YouTube. Basically, if you have a skill that you need to learn and you need multiple ways of learning it, if it's in a PDF, if it's video, if it's, learning music and you need chord charts, this is an incredible place to find all of those things in one area. So the way it works is that you sign up by going to the Skillshare website. Then you go to the home page and type in whatever skill that you need to learn or that you want to learn. And so for video editing, for example, all I do is just type in video editing. And once I type video editing in, a whole host of courses comes up at the bottom, and I just choose whichever one that I want to use. Then after you get into the course, if you already know some things, some of the basics, you can skip through and just find the things that you don't know, or you can go all the way through the course starting from the top. So if you want to take your business, your career, or even your musical ability to the next level, check out my personal link to Skillshare in the description below, where the first 1,000 people will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Now, let's get back to the video. Now, this one took me some years to learn, but confidence is a sound. Basically, all this means is that when you play and you play timid, people can feel that. Even if you're playing all the right notes, if you're playing timid, people in the audience and also the artists can feel that you're playing timid. And the thing is that it makes the music feel kind of tense and people don't feel comfortable. They don't feel like they can sit in it and be like, this feels good. So whenever you're playing, know that confidence is a sound. So when you come into it, if the song comes in strong, come in strong. If you come in on the wrong note, then that's fine. You'll correct it faster. Now, a huge way that I gain confidence in my playing all the time is by knowing my music. I know that sounds very simple, but when you're playing a lot of different songs, I mean, I've played hundreds of songs in a day before, but if you know your music, you just have a confidence unlike anything, because usually the time you're most timid is when you're unsure. So make sure you learn your music so well that you're confident in it. And you're like, you know what? I know this part. I know this bridge part that's coming up. Having that confidence is not a bad thing. It actually shows in your playing. Now, for me, when I know that I have a song and I'm pretty confident in it, is when I see the name of a song on a playlist and I can immediately play the song in my head and be like, I can hum it and I can be like, oh, okay, yeah. I know what happened there. I know what happened there. But for me, that's how I know, because I can generate the thought in my head and the sound in my head. Like I think about the bass part and know, oh, okay, that's what the first verse is. Oh yeah, the second verse has got that thing. But when I know that I'm not going to be confident in it, is when I look at the song and I'm just like, how does that song go? I have no idea. Oh my gosh, what even key is this song in? That's how I know. I was like, all right, Travis, you need to listen to the song a little bit more. You need to like, you know, get in the shed on this a little bit more. Sometimes you just have to hear it. Because if you're a musician, a lot of times the hardest thing is just understanding where the song is going. If you understand where the song is going, even if you don't have as much time to get it under your hands with a bass or an instrument, you're just going to be in a lot better of a place than if you waited until you got your bass to listen to a song. So if you're trying to gain confidence, one huge thing, listen to your songs with or without your bass. Now, what a lot of professionals know is what tone to use where. Now, this is something that is a huge sign of a professional and a beginner, because a lot of beginners don't have any idea the concept of tone and how it works in different settings, different dynamics, all these different things. One huge way is using it in genre. When you know what genre you're playing, you kind of understand what tone needs to be there. Now, this is something a lot of pros know about. That's the reason why you see a lot of bass players have different basses, because there's different tones for different genres, different tonalities for different dynamics that are happening in the song. That's why you see a lot of times with CCM artists, I like to take some type of P bass or, you know, a jazz bass. But I'm not going to be, you know, going for my brightest bass to go play with worship or anything like that. I'm going to take something that fits the genre, which is like a P bass, which most times when you're hearing these worship records is either a P bass or some type of jazz bass. Now, another thing when it comes to tone is what pedals to choose. Now, I have a video, I'll link it up here somewhere. It's 4 bass pedals that every bass player should have. Those are just kind of the essential foundational pedals, no matter what genre you're playing in. But once you start to understand what you're playing in, like what genre you're playing in, you can start to be like, oh, you know what? I actually need a distortion. You know what? I actually need an octave. I need this one special pedal. This is the reason why, like, when it comes to playing with all these different people and playing with all these, you know, different bands, professionals know, oh, this is a rock guy, so I need to have a distortion. I probably need to have some type of phaser, you know, or if I'm playing with a fusion band, it's like, oh man, a phaser would be sick, an octave, you know, different things that you know could be very useful in the style of music that you're playing. Now, this may just be my opinion, but all the people that I look up to as far as musical role models have this trait, which is complimenting band members. Basically, what that means is that everybody on the band wants each other to succeed. If there's a solo or if there's a moment that a guitar player is doing or a bass player is doing or a drummer is doing, you want them to succeed. So what you're going to do is you're going to try to set them up. It's like you're throwing the ball to the best batter on the team and you want them to hit it. You want them to get a home run. So what this concept consists of is making sure you're a team player, essentially. So if somebody's got a solo, make sure you're like, if it's a guitar player and he's going to be really high, go low if you're playing bass. If the guitar player is going to go low, go high. So whatever they're doing, it complements, you know, what's happening. Because when you complement your band members, it makes the music better and also your chemistry. And once you start to gain that chemistry, now you're going to have friends forever and have opportunities forever. There's one huge thing that I live by when it comes to this whole concept of complimenting band members, which is ego is the biggest killer of effective creativity. And once you understand that, you start seeing like, this is not just about me. This is about my team. This is about the artist. This is what's going to transform your playing and your creativity to a higher level than you've ever thought before. Because whenever you have your ego involved, it's more about the musician than it is about the music. So whenever you're playing in a band or anywhere, try your best to take your ego out of it and play the music. So now the last tip that pros know is one that has affected me so much, which is thinking like a listener. This whole concept pretty much is based on every time you play, the listener is learning the song. So even if the person has heard the song before or anything like that, they hear it in the moment, it's almost like they're relearning the song when it comes to just sitting out at a concert or whatever. They're having to relearn the song and be like, oh yeah, this part's coming up, you know, because they're having to get their minds locked onto the train of the music that's happening. But because of that, when I play in the professional circuits, when I'm playing with professional artists, different things like that, I never play licks on the first verse or first chorus of any song, most times. And the reason why is because in my head, I'm thinking like this is the listener's first time ever hearing the song. So if it's the listener's first time ever hearing the song, you don't want to add anything that's different than that original music for the first verse and first chorus. But once they get past those first two and you're going back into like the second verse and second chorus, now you can do some things to spice it up. And that's the reason why whenever professionals play and they place these licks just so perfectly is because you've learned the song and you're like, oh, okay, I know what this is supposed to sound like. So when it goes back to that verse or goes back to that chorus, when you change something, it's like, ooh, whoa, what was that? Whoa, what did he do? Did the guitar player do something? Like, because, and gives you that effect that's way stronger than if they don't even know what the bass line is for the music. And honestly, when you think like a listener or who the audience is that you're creating for or who the artist is that you're playing for, then you can be more effective as a musician. You can be like, oh, this is a rock crowd, so they're going to really want to be energetic, so I need to be energetic. Or if it's a jazz crowd and everybody's really just listening to the music, they don't care what you're doing as long as the music is good, okay? So I need to be focused on the music. You know, all these different aspects, is when you're thinking like a listener, can make you so much better as a player. So all these things boil down to this. When you think like a listener, you can become the most effective musician. So no matter if you're playing in the professional music industry, if you're playing just a local gig, or if you're playing in church, all of these different ways of playing bass like a professional is going to help you. It's going to help you get more opportunities. It's going to help you be a better musician and have a better music life. And honestly, it's just going to stretch you to be just a better person in general. So make sure, take every one of these and try to apply it into your music life. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to comment below, or if I missed anything that you know that would be a really great help to anybody else in the bass community, let me know in the comments. I want to give a huge thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Thank you guys so much for your support. I'll see you next time.
Ah, another bassist with a big muff.
Yep, the big muff. You picked that out.
Oh yeah.
Indeed.
Travis
That was one
Dykes.
that's, let's see.
Great find,
I
man.
want to say it was the. Now this page, I'm seeing it coming up blank on the on here, so we might have to bring it off the stage. Oh, there we go. Nice. Just my graphics are behind. Beautiful.
Yeah, that's at Travis Dykes over at YouTube. Awesome find, man. That was not just bass advice. That was solid music advice. I mean,
and life advice, really. I mean, when you get down to, you know, the listening aspect, you know, think like a listener. That you know, conversations, same thing is applicable. But musically, absolutely. I mean, think like a listener and know your material, also very important. I mean, all of these things are critical. And a lot of times, you know, I don't always know what I'm going to be playing when I go into something, but a lot of times it's because I'm going into something that's unknown. Like, you know, I'm going to be the house bass player for, you know, an open jam over here. So I'm just available if anybody's playing and wants a bass player to back them up, you know, jump up, let me know, you know, you want to do a particular song, call it. If you want to do, oh, we're going to do something in C minor, whatever. Okay. You know, just let me know. You know, we can communicate, we can figure out what we're going to do and jump into it.
And being a listener like that lends to his advice about, you know, where to spice things up. Like starting a song a little more basic is good for the listener. You bringing them into the song, and maybe on the second verse or the second chorus, you start to add, you know, a little more dynamics to build things up. That was fantastic. And his space advice, something a lot of musicians these days don't do. They don't give things a chance to breathe and confidence. That particular advice was spot on. Confidence is a sound, and people can hear it when it's not there.
Oh yeah. On the space question, what it reminds me of is when, you know, when humans are small, you know, you learn how to crawl, and then you learn how to walk, and then you learn how to run. And basically, as soon as you learn how to walk and run, you're gone, right? I mean, you're just walking and running like all day long. You just
that's like the little guy upstairs.
Exactly. So when you're learning how to play scales, it's like as soon as you get to the point where you can confidently, run all over the fretboard, sometimes people they get to that and they just once they started running, they've never slowed down since. Like they've been doing that for 30 years now. They just keep and it's like, you got to know where to put that space. So that's why to me, I always would recommend to anybody learning an instrument, like learn something like the blues, because the blues is a very simple structure, but there's so much space and so much emotion in there that if you learn to be able to speak in the blues, like if somebody just said, hey, let's play some blues in E, and if you're just like, what am I supposed to play, that's where like just sitting down with it, getting comfortable with the different structures of the blues and things like that, because it's a very simple style, very simple structure to get started with, very simple way to have commonality with other musicians, even if you've not all played together before. If you all know how to play blues in E or whatever key, then you can just sit down and play something,
Yeah,
So that's one of those that I recommend.
and it's a genre that, depending on what others like, you want to play rock or even folk and some of the other ones, blues is a good stepping stone to those other genres.
Oh, yeah.
Which goes to
And it'll get you
his
lots of
tone.
pentatonic work.
His tone
Yeah.
advice
Oh, yeah.
was relevant there, because you're going to want certain tones for certain sounds.
Exactly. And that's something that I'm guilty of, where I have my main bass is my 5-string Fender, and I have, a lot of times I just have both volumes cranked full and the tone knob and halfway or 2/3 or whatever it is, like it's just in the spot that it's usually in, and I just leave it at that and I go. And all the tone differences that I get, all the different sounds I get, are all just from me changing where and how I play, where, how, and how hard, I guess. Because I could be slapping, I could be playing way back towards the very end of the strings where things are sounding more muted, or I could be playing up near the fretboard where it's sounding more lively.
And that's where
You can do a
that's where
lot of changes.
technique helps you to shape your tone as
Exactly.
much as the instrument itself.
Exactly. But I should get more comfortable with, okay, if I'm going to be doing songs that are in this style, I should have more, like you're saying, the big muff. Like I have one sitting over there. I can get that into my pedal rig and have it so that it's available. So if I needed to kick it in, I can just bam, kick it in and go. And that the one I have is the big green bass big muff. So there is a big muff that is for the guitar, and then this is for the bass. But my buddy, who was a guitar player, tried the bass big muff and found something different from the other big muffs that he'd had, which I'll have to figure out what it was again. But it almost sounded like another guitar playing in unison with him in a different way that made a really interesting harmonic going on.
Oh, we'll have to do
We'll have to revisit that one day.
We'll have to do a muff off one.
Yeah, it'll be the muff challenge or something. Yeah.
So at Travis Dykes, TD, like his initials.
Very cool stuff. And again, I've seen several of these videos now that we've once I saw the first one, they started coming up more in my feed, and I've been impressed with all the stuff that I've seen. And even that one right there just has so many different nuggets that are so true and so useful, that I think that's very useful.
Oh yeah. He's got some great content in here. I mean, I know you as a bassist will be visiting often.
Oh yeah. Love it.
Now,
good bass info.
I have always wanted to get a digital drum set. I feel like if I got one, I would really put that effort to learn drums. And
that's my keyboard.
And as I was like hunting around, I came across this one, and this is a $450 digital drum set, which to me, it seems so cheap. I'm so used to, like, when digital drums first came out in the 90s, thousands of dollars. And even now, like the mesh kits, and they're not cheap.
No. And that's the thing, you mentioned it right there, the mesh kits. Like that's one where the one that I have, it's actually underneath this keyboard that's right here. This keyboard stand is actually the drum kit. So you can't really see the cymbals are back actually just out of camera frame, but they're right behind it. But the three the toms in this setup are basically on a boomerang. So imagine like a boomerang that's got targets that are maybe this big around for you to hit. So that's like, tom 1, tom 2, and the floor tom. And then you have the snare is the little pad that's right in front of it. But they're all very solid. Like that boomerang is a solid plastic piece with those 3 pads on it. And they're, the target area that you're shooting for is the middle of that little pad.
It's a little tighter. It's a little tighter of a target, but it's a tighter target. You're a good drummer.
The mesh ones though are a larger target, and what I like about that is that this one is much more solid. Where if you're hitting it solid in a bad way, I mean, because if you're hitting it, it's like there's a lot of rebound, but it's also much louder. And, you know, normally if you had a mesh kit and you're hitting mesh, it's much, much quieter because you're just hitting essentially a trampoline, which, you know, doing, doing, doing as it's hitting. So it's not
everything
making a huge
I've
slap sound.
Everything I've heard from drummers who converted from analog kits to digital kits, the reason why they have liked the mesh and some of them have converted is because it gives that tactical feel that some drummers really need that. Like rubber tactical feedback kind of changes your playing.
I will say that if you're well centered on these little pads, like if your targeting is very good and you're, you know, a drummer who's used to drumming and you just got this as a thing just to have off on the side to practice on, it would be perfect for you. But if you're somebody who's just starting out on drums, I think you'd get a lot less consistent results, because if you're not hitting the center, like, you know, 2-inch circle of that pad, you're not getting the same rebound and the same sound that you would be getting if you were hitting it right. But if you have good targeting, you can just like cruise around like that, because it does have good bounce feedback from there. But I would much prefer a mesh kit. But the kit I have, I think it was one that was maybe $120, so it was something that was literally like one step up from a toy. And what you're talking about here is now like getting into the serious, you know, electric drum kit, which I'm going to enjoy.
Yeah,
that's something I would look at for sure.
I'm betting that the bulk of the cost is going to go into the synth engine that it comes with.
Sure.
You know, that's what tends to make it a little more pricier. You need a good sound module. If you're going to play digital drums, you need some good samples to make it sound like real drums.
Yeah, and the main thing to me that comes down to is dynamics. Being able to sit down and being able to play quietly up to very, very loud and very back to quiet and have it sound like a smooth transition. It's not like, you know, very quiet is almost nothing, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's super loud, and then all of a sudden it's out there. You know, you have to have it has to feel and sound like it would on a regular kit to me, for it to sound to be solid.
So what surprised me here was the company, Donner, is not one that I'm familiar with. That's kind of what got my curiosity, because up till now, if I'm looking at digital drums, I'm looking at things like Alesis or Roland, you know, the names that, you know, go with digital drums. So I'm curious to his review on this company and whether the value's there.
Sure.
So this one came from at R. David R. over on YouTube.
And that's a new one for me.
And he is a drummer.
Nice. And this is the drum set is way more fun than it should be. Let's check it out.
Yeah, $450.
It has been a while since we've checked out a cheaper kit. I've been spoiled playing on that Welch kit and the Rototom kit and the Premier kit and the Sonar kit. Not Sonar, Sonor. I made fun of Bryce for saying it weird when in reality it was me that couldn't pronounce it. So today we have another Donner kit, except this is an electronic drum set. Everyone has been asking why I never show electronic kits on the channel, and to be 100% honest, I had what was the worst experience ever with one of the cheapest electronic kits that are out there, and ever since that moment I've been a little bit scared. That was a couple years ago though, so hopefully this one actually works. The Donner DED 200 drum stool bracket. You can always judge a drum set by the throne that it comes with. This one's not the best, but not the worst. It is pretty wide, which you don't see on a lot of cheaper kits, so hopefully the top is nice and plush. Hold up. Did y'all see that? That one speck of styrofoam jumped out of the box and was attracted by the electrostatic force of my beard. Drum stool surface. Alright. Bonus points for them not to put the plastic on and then this piece on. I can't tell you how many times I've opened a budget kit and the plastic is screwed on because of this piece, which makes no sense at all. It's not the thickest, but for a budget kit, it's acceptable, so I give it, I don't know, a C+. Kick, pad, and pedal. So that's one nice thing about this kit. It comes with a bass pad and pedal. Most cheaper E-kits come with a pedal like this, which on this kit is the hi-hat pedal. We got some sick headphones. I feel like I'm back in middle school wearing these. Accessories B. Alright, I don't know where the A accessories went. Tom mounts, power cord, cables, and all this stuff. Alright, let's check out this Crash Ride. Pretty standard E-kit stuff made of plastic and rubber. I'm curious though if this has multiple playing zones on it though. Oh, we got all the cymbals up in here. Another Crash Ride, another Crash Ride, and the hi-hat, which all of these look the exact same. Got all of the boom arms and this expansion lock. We got one, we got two, we got three toms, and a snare. Both the tom and snare have mesh heads on them. But the rim on the snare is rubber, so I guess you can do rim shots on it. Oh, what? I did that just for you. You better subscribe. This little unit actually looks halfway decent. It's nice and compact. All the buttons are easy to read. So we'll have to see how easy this is to actually use and see all the options that this comes with. Let's see how long it takes me to put this together without the instructions. I definitely need the instructions, or at least a picture. Can't forget the expansion lock, and I gotta put it together. Now we got all the cables left. Finally, the power cord. What's that, about 20 minutes? Yeah, you can choke them. Metal, here we go. There is an ambience knob, so let's crank some ambience up. Here's halfway. Here's all the way. And back down to nothing. Speed metal. That wasn't very speed metal-y. Ooh, we finally get to China. Oh. Grunge. Again, totally not a grunge beat. Alright, I got this convoluted camera set up just to show you this. If we go to coach, you'll see we have time check, which basically just tells you if you're rushing or dragging. Quiet cont, which is basically just like a gap click. And then auto up down, which is kind of pointless. It kind of just like ramps through different BPMs. But let's go up to time check and see how good my timing is. Oh no, I'm fast! Oh no, I'm slow, but it says I'm fast. Score 59. So I kind of did that on purpose, but It doesn't really say if you're slow, it just says if you're fast, and if you're slow, it says you're fast. Let's see how smart this really is, though. $37. I did get a little bit off though. All right, let's try the quiet Kant. Oh, 100. So this is actually a really good tool for helping with keeping time. What's really hard is when you play a fill in those gaps. But what about the songs? Playing along to tracks like this brings back a lot of memories. One year for Christmas, my sister got an old Casio keyboard, and I would steal it, put it on song mode, and drum along to that thing all day long. But then I was able to upgrade to this thing, a Boss DR5, which this thing and that Casio have very similar sounding tracks to this Donner kit. So let's keep going. I think the next track is the key gen type beat. Sounds like a Detroit type beat. I am kind of skipping around because there's 50 songs on this thing, and a lot of them, like this one, aren't exactly my style. So let's scroll some more. Now, another nice thing about these tracks is they do have drums on them, but you have the option to mute them and do your own thing, which is what I've been doing. But also, you do have the option to add a click track. For my first time diving into an E-kit, I gotta say that I love it. 30 preset kits, 50 songs to play, plus all the little coaching games make this a really fun kit to play. And as much as I complain about cheap thrones and headphones and everything, it's actually great that this kit comes with everything you need, including drumsticks, and are the kind of things you'd rather have and not need than need and not have. So I've had a blast checking out this kit. I'll probably set it up in my office or something, but let me know in the comments if you play an E-kit, and if you are interested in checking out this kit for yourself, you can follow the links down in the description.
Nice. Yeah, that is a very cool kit, and I really do like the mesh heads, and the responsiveness of the kit was very solid. Like compared to, again, what my experience, I also had less than ideal experience with the kit that I was using, but that's because it was literally the bottom end kit that you could get, and it was just to have something in the house where I could actually put sticks to something to get a beat going, because I wasn't a big fan of the little buttons, because you can only get so much out with the little buttons. You can't do a whole lot of and not that I have to do that a lot in my songs, but you can't do it at all if you don't have the right tools. So that was excellent stuff.
Yeah, he made a good point at the beginning where, like, if you try something like a digital drum set and you start with a toy, it can dissuade you from trying another one for a long time.
At the same time, and I will say that not everybody would want to jump in at $450 to see if that's what would do it for them, but at that price point, I mean, that's not bad at all. And I don't know if that's the price right now, but that is a price point that would work for me for a kit like that, because to upgrade this to that, it would be ideal. I mean, it would fit in the same spot basically, and I could still use it as a keyboard stand and then just take the keyboard off when I want to actually play.
Yeah, if you're looking at some of the Lisis mesh kits, I mean, some of them do start around 400 also. They don't come with as much stuff though. This one actually, like, good cymbal choices. The hi-hat, I was really impressed with the hi-hat action he was getting, because that's usually the one that a lot of drummers get pissy with. The digital hi-hats, they don't have that responsiveness like he had there.
Now, I think he said that all four of the cymbals, all of the cymbals, including the hi-hat, were all the same.
And you could pinch them.
In terms of the action. And you can pinch them off. That's the main thing. You can choke them. And even the cheapest kit that I'd worked with, you can choke that as well. And it isn't really, it's not like you're clicking a button or anything. It's just you literally touch it, the same way that you would with a cymbal. Like as you touch it, it's like, oh, okay, and it shuts itself off.
Now,
so that's
one thing I was wondering is whether you can add a second bass pedal, because if you do want to be playing metal, a lot of metal heads need that double bass.
And that's the question would be to me, is if that's built into the setting already. Because when he did one of the metal settings, I think he did get a couple of rolls that sounded like it was double kick, but I don't know for sure that it was. In some cases, it might be even where they just for that particular setting, they might have it where the hi-hat would double as a hi-hat and a kick at the same
that's
time.
what I was thinking. Like if you really wanted to do a workaround, you could reprogram the hi-hat pedal to a second bass.
Yeah, I think the main workaround is just in one of the setups. It probably has both a hi-hat and a kick on there. You can go back and forth because they figure you're going to be crashing cymbals anyway when you're going back and forth. So it's just putting that, that second kick and the hi-hat, at the same time. So and you can just go from there. But I'm not sure on that. Like that would be my guess as to how it's set up though.
No, that was
very
great
good info all around for sure.
That was a great review on that. I mean, I'm interested in a digital drum set. Have always been.
Was that this page?
Yep. This is R David R at YouTube.
That's new to me, so I'm definitely glad you found that for sure.
Yeah, he's another freshie.
And he had you see that little styrofoam jump out on his beard.
Oh yeah, that styrofoam had attitude.
And I'm not letting go. No. Very cool. And again, like the review, I like the fact, like you said, I like the fact that everything was in the box. At the same time, I don't necessarily need headphones or, a pair of sticks, but at the same time, I doubt that it would take much off the price to take those things out. So at the same time,
well, it's a good starter package. If you're buying like a kid a first time digital set, it comes with everything necessary. The one thing I wish he'd mentioned more was the MIDI implementation, like the module. I'm positive the module's going to connect USB and provide MIDI, which would allow you to actually play other drum kits outside of the module.
Oh yeah. Not to mention the fact that even if you did say get something from that, record it, and then you could always do the drum replacement thing to change the hits. You've already got the hits timed and in, so that, you know, that's, to me, that's the triggers that are the main thing. So getting those triggers reliably in is the main thing.
Yeah, and drum remapping is surprisingly easy. The only other question I have is not one he can answer until time. Like, how durable is it? You're beating on this thing. How long can you beat on it before you get some wear and tear? Drums take a beating.
Yeah, it's true. And that's one where, you know, again, the ones that I have, they seem like they'd be very sturdy because it is just one solid piece with the rubber pads that are in there. And it probably would last for a long time. My main complaint is just that it's loud when I'm playing. You know, if I was trying to play in headphones quietly, there's, you know, everything is like the cymbals are plastic. So if I'm, you know, like you'll hear that as I'm hitting that. But that's, you know, it's going to be with almost any of these electronic kits, because when you're hitting those cymbals, you know, that is a plastic surface that you're hitting on the front there. So, you know, it'll have rubber as well, but it's typically a pretty loud crack on the top.
Yeah, it's kind of impossible to play drums and not make some noise.
and there's no reason for me to be silent either. So, I mean, you know, I'm allowed to play drums in my house. So
it's my house.
My house, damn it. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is actually microphones. And this is one that I've been thinking about as far as microphones on, like, whether it's on a clip-on mic with the Lavo mics, or whether it's a shotgun mic to bring it in. And there's reasons to use both. It's pros and cons. But
yes, this is one of those things that when it comes to doing podcasts and interviews, the mics we're going to be talking about here serve both musicians and production.
Exactly. And that's where, like, the lavalier mics might be better for doing interviews and things like that. But again, the shotgun mics are frequently used. But if you have to switch back and forth between speakers, it'd be better to have them both mic'd instead of having to try to catch it all from a midpoint or be right over one or the other. So there's reasons to use both, but I'm curious to see what they say as the comparisons here.
Yeah, and honestly, I'd love to have each of these mics in my utility belt.
Yep.
Because they do serve purposes that are always useful. And this one comes from Audio University, quickly becoming like one of my all-time favorite music resources. He's kind of found I found a video from him pretty much any week we're talking about something.
Nice.
He's got information on everything on this site. He's a gearhead, a music aficionado, and he presents it so well, easy to understand.
Always a bonus.
I mean,
You
I
able to get the information.
already see some other topics just looking at this like little bit of the page.
Coming soon to an episode near you.
So this one is about lavaliers versus shotgun microphones, the pros and cons, and there are some cons, and it's good to know the pros when it comes to why you would want to have some of these mics handy.
Yep, let's check it out.
Recording audio for your video productions, both shotgun mics and lav mics have benefits and drawbacks. In this video, I'm talking with John McGregor from Sennheiser's Sound Academy to help you decide which one is right for you.
Framing wise, you'd have to be pretty close to get these cropped out of the image.
The closer you get, the tighter that frame would need to be
which-
without dipping into the frame. Whereas if there's a wide frame, having this at that distance, you may not even see it anyway. And it's definitely going to give you much, much better audio because contrary to popular belief, though a shotgun can reject sound from the sides, it's not a telescope.
No, it's not. But at the same time, is the shoot appropriate to have a Lavalier on?
For a newscast, it's very clear that there are cameras in the room. We're not trying to create a space that's supposed to look natural. Whereas in a film, a fiction film especially, not a documentary, but a film where you're supposed to be in that world, it would be pretty off-putting and it would really break the fourth wall if you had a big mic sitting right there.
Now these are pretty big Lavaliers. You also get really, really small, tiny Lavaliers that you can hide inside your hairline and things like that. Another time you'd want to use a shotgun is also because you want a more natural sound. I mean, if you're listening to this lav right now, this is going to be quite chesty, quite boomy. Most bass from most people comes from their chest. That's where the cavities are that can resonate that frequency.
And that could be a good thing.
That can be a very good thing, but it's not the most natural sound that we're used to listening to. I mean, we're sitting here in this room. This room's not too bad. It's a little bit reverberant in here, but it's more natural. This is very intimate and close. Yes, it will pick up a little bit of the room, obviously, because it's an omnidirectional microphone, but that's more natural than this is.
But there are some seriously reverberant rooms, and in those cases, you are using a Omni Lav here, but there's also the fact that it's much closer. So though it has an omnipolar pattern, it's much closer to you, so that ratio between the direct sound and the reverberant sound would be much wider.
Yeah.
The shotgun is much further away, but it has this interference tube that allows it to cancel sounds from the sides. Shotguns are really useful when the on-axis sound is quite different than the off-axis sound.
Very much so. You can end up with reflections actually being directed back up the barrel of the shotgun. So obviously we know that the shotgun needs that interference tube to help cancel out side noises. In a reverberant space, you could get some of that reverb, that reflected sound going back up the barrel, straight direct sound. And depending on how long or how short that reflection is, you could end up with phasing going on. So you could get a real phasing issue going on where you know that there's something going wrong. Or you just really hear this reverberant, echoey space, which is, again, not something you want. And it's to do with the distance. In general, we would say shotguns are better for more controlled spaces, or even better outdoors, where what we're trying to do is, as you said, the direct sound is very different from that side sounds that are coming into the microphone. So, for example, outdoor noises, cars driving past and so on and so forth, you're trying to do an interview, that's very different, and you can use that difference in tonality to help the microphone do what it needs to do.
Pay attention not only to where it's picking up, but where it is rejecting. If the noise is behind me, you may want to redirect the microphone so that that noise is then off axis to the mic.
There's a classic one of why you see boom pole operators pointing the back end of the microphone straight up into the sky. Because on shotgun microphones, there is a little bubble of sound at the rear where it will pick up a little bit of sound. But directly on those side points, on that sort of the 90 and the 270, roughly, it's cancelling out what's going on. Basically, you either have to have an operator, a sound guy with a boom pole operating it, which means it's another person on your crew. If you're outside in a crowded environment, you're going to have someone spotting, so i.e. helping direct the boom guy to make sure they don't run into things. That's another person on your crew. It becomes very restrictive for the people who are being recorded.
This is an omnidirectional mic. That is technically then a super cardioid mic with a interference tube added to it. But by nature then, this mic is less susceptible to the proximity effect.
Yeah, very.
So even though it does get closer to the chest, it's extremely close to the source, very small proximity, it doesn't have as much of a buildup as if you were maybe using a cardioid.
Yeah, if you're using a cardioid lavs, I mean, we do have cardioid lavs. They're not necessarily as popular. I'm not sure if that's to do with just sound because of the proximity effect, or if they're just not popular, full stop. But yeah, a cardioid being this close is within, well, that's more than 5 centimeters, but 5 centimeters are kind of our rule that you'll get a 6 dB boost in bass frequencies in proximity effect. Is that a good thing? Again, it depends on what people are wanting to get from the sound, but the Omni will give you that natural, unaffected sound. There's no bass boost going on, and obviously other effects. I mean, Omnis as well, a great thing for kind of sort of being outdoors is Omnis don't really suffer from wind and noise so much, and specifically don't suffer from popping noises. So if you get that they won't suffer from it, even though they are kind of down here. As you said, if you're looking, if I'm looking down and I'm talking, I'm doing something on my computer, and I could go puh, and it will hit it. Whereas directional microphones really suffer from wind noise and popping noises and so on. So, a shotgun outside is one of the reasons why we have things like this to help with those windy days.
Yeah, and just for those who are unfamiliar, this is a tube that the microphone can go into, and it just basically diffuses the wind. Wind is a huge problem, especially for a very directional microphone. There are also then solutions similarly for lavs.
One of the ideas would be you want to use a shotgun because you really want to get this away from the talent, because as an example, you can hear this on the audio, talent can do this, and that's going to make a nice crunchy noise. Whereas the shotgun, that shotgun audio is going to stay nice and clean because the talent's not touching it. As I'm moving my head up and down, if you hear that, there will be an audio change going on, because even though it's an omnidirectional microphone, we're now getting closer, further away. It's the classic one of when you see reporters having a lavalier on their jacket collar and they're talking to someone here, which is absolutely fine, but when they turn that way to talk to another person, it's gone, which is why normally on news reports you'll actually see people with two lavaliers for that talking over at different people.
So you always have one on the direction that the person's speaking. Yeah, that makes sense. At this tiny range, the difference a small movement can make is quite large in proportion to the total distance. Whereas here, even if I move this far, it's still relatively small in comparison to the total distance the sound has to travel, right?
If you're out in a crowded environment doing an interview, for example, slap two lavaliers on and move around. Yeah, okay, people might walk in front of the camera shot, but that's kind of the natural feeling. You're out in a wide open space, there's lots of people, it's a busy environment. It doesn't matter if people walk in front of the shot because it's kind of what you're doing. And it removes that restriction of being stuck to having some poor person standing there with a boom pole above their head the whole afternoon.
Yeah, holding that above their head and being cognizant of shadows that they're casting onto the frame, or
even dropping into the frame.
Yeah, and I've seen that in professional films, because at a certain point, if that happened on the good take, it's like, well, that's the best take. It's the only good take in some cases, so that's what they used.
Well, I think the best one was the season 1 of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
There was a scene in there, I can't remember which episode it was. It's in the middle of one of the scenes, and you just see this shotgun going whoop, whoop, out the scene.
Yeah, I guess they use shotguns even in a galaxy far, far away.
Probably a Sennheiser one too.
Probably. Most of the time, that audio will be replaced after the fact. So we're just trying to get sort of like a field recording of the film for reference later on so that we can match it up. The best method for a absolutely critical film shoot would be, if resources were unlimited, to use everything at your disposal.
Have everything you can get your hands on.
Yeah, anything is going to be better than obviously using the camera audio. So just as an example, this room isn't that bad, but here right now you're hearing the camera audio, and it's quite terrible. The live audio sounds a lot cleaner, but again, it's subject to those different side effects that we've discussed in this video. And right now you're hearing the shotgun mic, which does have its own effects as well. Now you know how to make the better decision that's right for you.
Oh, great mic advice.
Absolutely. Now I actually simulated some wind over here, so I've got a fan blowing right at my microphone, but I've got the little fuzzball on it.
You're in a simulation.
It's in a simulation, so like I'm a little bit quieter because of the going through the fuzzball, but at the same time, there's literally you can see the here. Let me do this. You can literally see the.
Oh wow, that really
fuzzball
is a fuzzball.
You can see it blowing in the wind because the wind is coming from over there. I got a fan blowing straight at my face. And normally you'd be hearing a lot more. Like if I take it off, you might not hear it too much, but.
Oh yeah, actually it's a big difference.
Because the wind is coming from straight over there.
I'm giving the weather. I'm in the middle of a tornado.
I don't have hair to be blowing off the side, but if I did, but when I put that back on.
Yeah, it does actually bring it down significantly.
And you can see the little hairs blowing around, and like the sound still gets through, but the wind is blocked from actually whipping across. So that was just a little example I wanted to make, because this is the one that I had from the Zoom recorder. Came with this in the accessory pack. It had that for covering the little 2 mics that are usually on there, but it's the perfect size also to just throw onto a mic. Now, if you were singing, like a lot of people, they want to sing up on the mic, and you don't want a face full of this.
Yeah.
You don't want to get right up on this. So it's more for if you're trying to get a scene, or again, trying to do something like this. If I was out getting men on the street reports in a windy, out in the hurricane, now back to you, John, like trying that kind of thing, but with this much wind, I am surprised at how much it literally eradicates
dilutes it to almost nothing.
It's almost not there. Yeah. So that was that, but I'll move the fan back now.
And
which page was that?
This was at Audio University over on YouTube. Awesome channel for anybody interested in production, equipment, or just to learn how sound works when you're trying to record it for music or film. Like the advice you saw here applies a lot to film audio, but same advice could work for drum miking. Like a shotgun, if you're trying to mic up a drum, might come in handy in certain situations.
Mhm.
A
And in a lot of cases,
lavalier, not so much, unless maybe the drummer wants to sing and doesn't want a mic, like, but if they were to have the mic in front, they would probably go with a shotgun.
yeah. I think a lot of people are going with when you hear them talk about, they talk about the lav mics or the lava mics or whatever, because they're, I think it's Lavalier is what he said in that one, and that sounds like
Oh, that sounds
the correct
fancy.
pronunciation. But my French is not as good as yours for sure, because you know more French than I do. But that would be one of those that I would probably just go with lav or lav. But or the lapel mics, because that works too, because people see them that way.
Yeah, and then
That is, it is good
there
talk.
is a difference, because I was shopping around for a clip-on mic for interviews. There is a difference between the lapels and the labs. Not completely sure what the pros and cons are there, but I might go hunt that for a future discussion.
Yeah, not a bad idea. And again, for me, the with a lot of the singers that we work with, they use the headsets. So basically, what you're doing, headset with the headset mic, not ears fully, but just they have in-ear monitors, and they just have the small mic coming down, so that if they're playing bass or whatever, they don't have to always be up on the mic stand.
Hey,
They can be wherever they want to
that
be.
was Phil Collins' choice.
Yeah, and some of the bands, actually, it was the drummer and the bass player and the guitar player all have the headset mics. The lead singer has a wireless, just regular mic like this, but a wireless one. And the guys who all have the headless mics, or the wireless mics, also can just go walk out in the crowd. So like the bass player and the guitar player can just kind of like wander off into the crowd with the singer, and they can all be wherever, because they've got the wireless setups.
And
But
singers tend to be the ones who actually might want to hold the mic. If you're playing an instrument, I mean, yeah, you look cool when you come up to the mic stand, and that's the rock and roll way. But if you do have a headset and you can just keep playing, you're much more comfortable.
in some cases, but it also depends on what you're singing and what your job is, so to speak, in the band. Because if you when you have to come up to the mic, like a lot of times, if you're doing, you want to do something lead, you come up to the mic and you can sing right into the mic. And then if you're doing backgrounds, you can be back here and just kind of doing your thing and adding a little bit to the backgrounds. But if you've got that headset mic on, you're at the same volume no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
So if you're
so
singing,
you have to
if you're
sing
singing
consistently.
you have to sing very quietly if you're doing backgrounds, and you sing very loud if you're doing foregrounds. So there is some level of the distance factor that comes.
Who's a good example of good background vocals using those headsets? Michael Anthony. During the 80s, when they were on tour, like I seen him a couple times on stage, and he would use a headset mic, and he had nice, consistent, doing all the Van Halen background vocals. The mic was perfect for him.
Nice. And again, like you said, it has to do with technique, and some people are perfect with it, and other people, they just don't get the differences or what they need to do differently to make it work. And same thing comes with the people who come in and let's watch your ears, but like people who come in and like they grab the mic like this and they're talking real loud. Like, you don't want that. Like, that was me talking extremely softly, and it was still probably quite loud to everybody out there. But if I was like talking at my regular volume and doing that, it would be, ear splitting, and also would, crackling and popping and all the bad things. So it's important to understand where you are in the room compared to your mic, and how it affects the way you sound. And if you want to say something that's very, intense and close,
very smooth,
you also got to back out and be able to, project from out here and be able to fill the room with the sound, so it's about how you utilize the tools as well.
Well, you are ready to do some voiceovers.
Well, thank you. And after these messages, we'll come right back with.
And I guarantee you, we will be revisiting this channel to perfect the techniques, because chock full of production tips and techniques. One of the best channels we've found so far.
I think we might even change gears a little bit at this point and go into some songwriting, some subtle aspects of songwriting.
Yeah, I wanted to bring. It's got.
Now, after these messages.
Well, this one comes from a channel that we've looked at a couple. Some of these awesome channels, keep finding their way back as we're hunting for information. And Samurai Guitars, I don't know if you remember, but he's the one who showed the like Casio MIDI guitar, and we had a couple of other guitar videos from him on Guitar Night, and his channel is so cool because like he's an out of the box thinking guitarist. It's not just, you know, guitar reviews. I mean, he does have a whole series just on weird guitars, which every once in a while when we do guitar nights, I'm checking part of that series.
Now I want to say, let's see. Now there's a particular one. It wasn't the harpeggi maybe, but there was one weird instrument that I thought I saw a video with him in. We'll see it later.
I wouldn't be surprised if he played around with the harpeggi. I mean, he's that kind of musician. You make a weird instrument, he's probably interested in.
And it's got strings on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was thinking that, but I could be wrong. We'll see.
Yeah, this video is about the subtle aspects of great songwriting. So not only is he going to talk about guitar approach, but we're looking at songwriting and ways to approach it.
Let's check it out.
Everyone, and welcome back to another Sensei series. Today we are looking at 9 subtle aspects of great songwriting. I'm a firm believer in the idea that great songs are rarely written, rather they are rewritten. The first draft is almost never the final copy and often requires significant polishing. The things we're looking at today are those small refining touches that can go neglected. I should note that while I have my specific musical biases, these things should apply no matter what genre you play. And keep in mind, at the end of the day, listen to what the song and your intuition is telling you. Links to individual tips in the description. Let's dive in. Number 1, pay close attention to what vowels are held out. As a non-singing guitarist, it took me a little while to figure out the difference between a clunky lyric and one that rolled off the tongue. A big aspect of this is which vowel sounds we decide to draw out. For example, imagine this simple lyric. Oh baby, you know that I love you. All the vowels that I dramatically held out are pleasing on the ear and easy to sing, compared to, say, these vowel sounds. I see you at the end of the day. O's, ahs, and oohs often sing better than e, a, and is. Number 2, syllable placement. Like I mentioned in our last point, a listener will be more engaged in a lyric if it sounds natural and flows with ease. If we're stressing syllables that should be unstressed, we're going to run into some trouble. It's the difference between saying syllable and syllable. Take, for example, the lyric, Friday night and you're sitting there. Focusing on just the rhythm, it would feel very unnatural to sing it as such. Friday night and you're sitting there. Instead, it'll sound much better like this. Friday night and you're sitting there. I would recommend you take some time to talk through your lyrics. Record yourself speaking them as if they were poetry. Your dictation will make it clear where those natural stresses are. Number 3, chord motion. We're moving into some harmonic stuff here. Now, a tool to maintain interest throughout your song is by invoking change, making things feel like they are moving forward and different in some way or another. There are a few ways we can do this using chords. One thing I like to do is focus my different sections of songs, verse, chorus, pre-chorus, for example, around different chords. If I'm in the key of C, I have the chords C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, and B minor 7 flat 5 available to me. If you need a refresher on how I came up with that, check out my video on musical theory. The first chord of your section often sets the mood for it. So for my verses, my progression might start on a C chord, my pre-choruses a D minor, and my choruses an F. Let's hear what that might sound like. Another way you can use chords to create a sense of change is by holding them out for different lengths. If I have a chord change every single bar for an entire song, it can sound stagnant and predictable. Staggering these spacings can alleviate that. Let's look at an example. During the verses, I'll change chords every bar, during the pre-choruses every half bar, and during the chorus, I'll change every 2 bars. Let's see if that helps differentiate the sections. course, you can find many songs that don't take this into account. There's no inherent flaw in a song that repeats the same progression with the same spacing. Instead, this is just something to be aware of. Number 4, melody start and end points. Once you have a decent concept for your melody, I would highly recommend you write it out using standard notation or figure out how to play it on an instrument. Look at which notes you are starting and ending your phrases on. Generally speaking, they'll be the ones with more musical weight on them and thus will stand out more. If you're starting and ending in the same places every time, your melody can sound repetitive and boring. At the same time, you want to be aware of where the melody sits rhythmically speaking. If it begins and ends on the same beat every phrase, you'll face the same issue. Number 5, lyrical spotlights. Certain places in music will carry more emphasis. Imagine a metaphorical spotlight shining on those spots. We want to try and place the more important words of our lyrics in those spots. For example, say I have the line, "The greatest thing in this world is the love I have for you." The words greatest, world, love, and you are the most important ones in delivering our message. So it makes sense that we put those words in places of emphasis like this. The greatest thing in this world is the love I have for you. Emphasizing the words of less value takes away from our message. For example, the greatest thing in this world is the love I have for you. I'm over exaggerating, but you get the point. Number 6, pronoun consistency. At the beginning of a song, we establish a relationship between us and the listener based on which pronouns we use. Is the narrator the subject of this song addressing an audience? In which case a lyric would go, "I think you're great." Am I maybe singing about someone else? In which case it would be, "I think he is great." Or maybe I'm taking an omnipresent view where I'm singing about other people. "He thinks she is great." Whatever it is, it's important to maintain consistency. There's no better way to confuse a listener than by switching pronouns mid-song. Moving on, number 7, tense consistency. We want to maintain some sort of coherency with our verb tenses. If part of my song is in the past and another part is in the future, that should be done as a creative device. Let's look at a bad example where our verbs are a mess. Coming home wasn't the same anymore. The house will be cold, it'll echo in the dark. And though your clothes still fill the dresser drawers, you didn't come back to fill my heart. We are all over the space-time continuum here for no apparent reason. Let's try fixing it. Coming home ain't the same no more. The house is cold, it echoes in the dark. And though your clothes still fill the dresser drawers, you won't be back to fill my heart. Here we make 3 statements in the present tense and the last is in the future. This adds to the impact of that final line. The lyric is saying everything in the future will be bad based on all these things I'm currently faced with. Be aware of this throughout an entire song, not just within single sections. Number 8, lyrical direction. In one way or another, you're telling us a story with your lyrics. And in order to tell a compelling story, there needs to be some sort of direction or growth. If you present me with the same idea over and over and over again, what's there to keep me interested? Ask yourself, what new piece of the puzzle am I revealing with this line, and how is that important to the overarching story? If you don't have a good answer, rewrite it. The last point for today is make sure we can root for your main character. Have you ever watched a TV show where you despise the main character? If so, you probably didn't watch it long. We need to care about the central figure of a story in one way or another for us to stay invested. If you're showing us somebody flawed who's made some bad mistakes, there needs to be some redeeming quality that makes these negatives forgivable. I ran into this exact problem with a song of mine once. I had written what I considered a pretty decent song about a guy longing for a girl who had left their hometown. But I grew a distaste for the guy singing the song. He came across as whiny and pathetic. I rewrote one line to change this. The guy says that deep down he's glad that she left because she was too good for that dying town and deserved better. Valuing her success over his love for her is his redeeming quality. The line was, "And though I wish you stayed here, so I was not alone, diamonds don't belong among the stones." Nailed it, Steve. You can listen to the full song with that link. And that's it for today. Keep in mind, there will be times when the things I have recommended shouldn't be used. You always need to listen to what the song is telling you first and foremost. Ultimately, I want you to be able to analyze every aspect of your song so that you can make sure you made the best possible decisions. At first, it may feel overwhelming, but it won't take long before this stuff is instinctual. I want to recommend the book that forever changed how I write songs. Writing Better Lyrics by Pat Pattison. I've recommended it before and I will recommend it again. It's a must-own for any serious songwriter. I will put an Amazon link down there in the description. Thank you all for watching, and to everyone who supports my channel through Patreon, an especially big thank you to you. You guys make it possible for me to make these videos. If you're interested in checking out that program and the unique rewards offered through it, click that link over there. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'm Samurai Guitarist, and I will see you again soon.
Oh yeah.
Damn it, Steve. You hit gold with that line. That was a good way to fix that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, just thinking about your characters in your song and thinking about, how to bring these things around. But yes, having general concepts and being able to stick to certain timeline things, that was important as well. A good example of, sticking to a tense, keeping us in the present and then going to the future, like that kind of stuff. Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that.
who would have thunk? I thought I was going to be hearing like guitar songwriting advice, and Ange is a samurai because
Oh yeah.
half of what he was saying there, I have heard her, especially like, the first, the vowel sounds, the
Yeah.
symbol placement, chord
Yep.
motion, and how you do your melody. These are things I hear from her all the time.
Oh yeah. And I mean, a lot of times we're just making stuff up off the fly when we're jamming with Ange, and I'll be playing bass and somebody will be playing guitar. A lot of times it's Bill or whoever, and she's singing and just coming up with something to either what we're playing inspires what she's thinking to a certain song she's already written and has prepared, or other times most of the time it's usually just off the top and just go with whatever's coming to mind from what we're playing, like what the feel is of what we started.
Yeah, and his suggestion when it comes to timing and how many chords you should play, when he gave that
Yeah.
example of like the verse playing 4 chords per measure, and then during the
Mhm.
bridge cutting it in half, which kind of makes the bridge kind of build up because you're hearing the chord changes faster, but then all of
More emotion. Yeah.
a sudden on the chorus you're hearing nice held out chords, and there's this feeling of like the moral of the story moment.
And that's the thing, is that's where the words and the song that is built around that particular structure has so much to do with it as well, because in that section where it is the last part where it's a chord lasting 2 measures each, if you're not careful, that can sound like it's drawn out, like it's just kind of like the song was going faster, like it was going 1 speed at the beginning, then it got faster and 4 times slower. But if the words there are giving you a suspenseful thing, for example, to me, that's where that is. Like you're building up some suspense there. You're telling a story. And, when you got to that pre-chorus, you're going like, oh, there's a lot of stuff going on to it. Da, da, da. But then you get over to that last part, that chorus part, and you're at the part where you're giving a message, like you're sending across a message, and then it changes from this key to that key for 2 measures. And then you're telling the other part of the message, or the cautionary tale. And then you're back to the first part, so there's, important story arcs that fit into those places.
And if you're a singer, it's that moment where the melody, the voice, and the words that it's saying have a moment to lead, to shine, be in front of. And that's why choruses are so important sometimes because of that.
Yeah. And a lot of times it can identify the song. And, if everybody's coming in singing and everything else, I mean, all that kind of stuff feeds together. And, it might not be that, like, you'll have different songs where, you want everybody together there, or everybody together here, or you want the chord changes to be faster here and slower there. But it was a good example of the, 3 different extremes, doing it 1 per measure, half per measure, and 1 every 2 measures is a good example of how it feels for each of those sections, and which sections of your song want those or need those, particular structures. Depends on the song, but also, it's important to understand how each one works so that you can say, oh, in this part of the song, I feel that it should be this fast little, the pre-chorus thing you were talking about with the 2 changes every measure. We do da, like doing like a 1 5 2 6, and then come back around, do that twice and then go to whatever. Keeps all those chords just happening. But the moral of that story is just keeping it all with the chords that are in key, and being comfortable with that palette of those first 6 chords. Because what is chord number 7?
Well, that's the glue. The chords that you're using. Yeah, 7's an asshole. we don't talk about 7.
But 1 through 6 are all good.
And another thing that was a kind of a theme for his suggestions at the end: consistency. He started with maintain consistency, and then tense consistency, which goes back to like how often you're hitting, doubling that time. The music kind of leads to a tension, a change. And then talking about like lyrical, like don't be in past tense, future tense. That is something I have seen so many songwriters who come to me like, I got this song, and one phrase it's like pre-tense, and then the next phrase it's like, whoa, are you?
It can get messy. And there's certain movies even that do that kind of thing where the whole timeline gets screwy because somebody goes future tense at the wrong time or past tense at the wrong time. In order to keep that story arc going the way it should be going, it's important to keep that, keep it consistent. You can go from past to future and flashback and flash forward, but like if you start flashing all over the place,
But
you make a mess of the whole thing.
if you're gonna do it in a song, you have a bigger challenge than if you were to write that in a novel, because in a novel you'd have an easier time explaining it, but in a song you only have so much space to say something.
At the
You
same
can't
time,
be explaining what you're saying unless you're really good at songwriting.
and that's where the verses come in, because I mean you can have 3-4 verses, let's say, but even in the choruses could be something that's telling, tying them all together, but each verse could be completely different. Like an example would be the first verse is like how they first met, right, the very beginning.
Yeah,
And
a
then
verse
the
can
next
evolve
verse,
the story.
right, exactly. The next
Exactly.
verse is in the middle of the story, and then it gets to the end of the story, but then that last verse could revisit. You can bounce back to something else, but you've been laying it out consistently. Those first 3, you're building a story, you're taking the people there, and then they want to know what's next. And that happened over there. Oh, like you didn't see that before. So like taking them somewhere else.
And see,
But
that's a good reason, if you do want to be a good songwriter, practice writing short stories
yeah, absolutely.
and novels. Practice the approaches that go there, and then you take that condensed into bars and measures, and it's a lot the same at that point.
And even storyboarding is another thing where now, especially with
Absolutely.
AI images, you can just describe a scene to the AI and boom, you have an image for it. And you can just go scene by scene and set your thing out and have a really good picture of how the whole story comes together just from kind of storyboarding it out and thinking about it in that way.
Yeah, think of your songs like scenes.
Mhm.
That
Absolutely.
verse is a scene.
Yeah. Because you're thinking about the universe where that is the case. That is the truth. So you're building around that. Good stuff.
Yeah, we learned so much about lyric writing and vocal writing from a guitarist.
It
He's a
happens,
good
man.
one.
It happens. I like it. Now the next one would be something about some distribution channels, right? Like the different places where.
Oh yeah. We've been talking in the last couple of weeks about this more because, once you have that song and you want to put it out there into the wild internet, a lot of different services. And we looked at it last week and some suggestions, free ones, free distributors. What made me interested with this was mentions 2 that I have not looked at yet. ASCAP, familiar with, because they've been the Songwriters Guild as long as I've been alive.
Yeah.
And BMI has, in the modern age, kind of taken up some of that mantle for other services and distribution. So what we're going to look at here is, DistroKid and TuneCore, services that basically came out for online streaming music, versus ASCAP and BMI, which started as traditional distribution and have adapted and kind of defined in some cases the way digital distribution is going.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing is, which way are trends going and which way is it has evolved over time for sure. And where are we now? Like, let's see what we're up to at this point.
And it's going to change again tomorrow. So
Yeah,
we need to calibrate at some point.
So we take this slice of time and we see what it's like between DistroKid and TuneCore and CD Baby and ASCAP.
Yeah, this was a cool channel, at Indie Music Academy. Again, a new one for us, freshly subscribed.
Yeah.
And this is indie musicians' resource, something that many of us are.
Absolutely. Should be good information for everybody. Let's check it out.
DistroKid doesn't copyright your music, and they also don't collect all of your royalties. You need a performing rights organization like ASCAP or BMI to do that. But even ASCAP and BMI, they don't copyright your music either. And there's another type of royalty that they don't even collect, that's collected by SoundExchange. But that doesn't even cover all your bases because your song still isn't copyrighted, and you still have to collect your overseas royalties and your YouTube Content ID royalties, and there's another place to sign up for that. So in this video, we're gonna cover a lot of ground, and we're going to compare and contrast the similarities and differences of DistroKid, ASCAP, BMI, SoundExchange, SongTrust, and the US government. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Ryan Vatsek from the Indie Music Academy, and today's video is going to be literally life-changing. If you've ever wondered, how do I get my songs registered in all the right places? And if you're someone who might not even know where to register in the first place, this video is going to be especially helpful to you because I'm going to list off all the places that you need to register your song. So let's get started. DistroKid. What is DistroKid and why do you need it? Well, a lot of you guys know that if you want to get your music on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, you need something called a distributor. And DistroKid is a really popular distributor with you guys. And I see in the comments that you guys talk about DistroKid a lot. A lot of you guys use DistroKid because it's like unlimited uploads. DistroKid and I, we don't have a good relationship, so I don't use DistroKid. But that aside, you do need a distributor of some type, whether or not it's CD Baby, TuneCore, Symphonic Distribution, AWOL Distribution, right? There's a ton out there. And you need distribution to get your music out there in the first place. And yes, they do collect some royalties. It really depends on what distributor you have as to which royalties they collect. For example, some distributors collect YouTube Content ID royalties, like my distributor AWOL. Whereas DistroKid, they won't collect those royalties for you unless if you pay an add-on charge, which is like totally unfair. But anyways, I don't want this to be a roast of DistroKid, even though they did ban me. Anyway, I'll do another video on that one day. A lot of artists think that just because they're getting some money from their distributor, that they're collecting all the royalties that they're generating with their music. But that's just simply not true. Distributors get your music out in the streaming platforms and they collect some royalties, but to collect your performance royalties, you need a performing rights organization like BMI or ASCAP. And I've done a ton of videos about performing rights organizations on this channel, including actually how to sign up for BMI and register a song. So if you are a BMI artist or you want to become a BMI artist, check out that video on this channel so that you could get your songs registered and you can collect your performance royalties. Now, performance royalties are just one type of royalty. It's a royalty that's generated through a song performance. A song performance can be literally a live performance, you playing live, or it can be your song playing on the radio. That also counts as a performance and generates a performance royalty collected by a performing rights organization, right? So DistroKid doesn't collect your performance royalties. They only collect a small portion of your royalties depending on their agreement with the streaming platforms. Now, I don't want to go too much into performing rights organizations because again, I have a ton of videos about them on this channel. But so far we've done distribution and your performing rights organization, and they're different entities. They don't actually overlap in duties, and just because you have a distributor doesn't mean you can forget about everything else. You need a distributor and then you need your performing rights organization to collect your performance royalties. But we're still not done yet because performing rights organizations don't collect all your royalties either. In fact, there's another type of royalty and another type of performing rights organization called SoundExchange that collects royalties on non-interactive streaming platforms. Now, what's non-interactive streaming? Well, it's the type of streaming where you don't actually get to choose what song you want to hear. So you're probably used to Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music, where if you click on a song, you get to listen to that song. That's called interactive streaming because you, the user, get to choose what you want to listen to. And then there are other platforms like the free version of Pandora, where it's only radio, and SiriusXM, for example, and other internet radio websites that are non-interactive streaming. So you just tune in either to a genre or you tune into the mainstream and you listen to music, and they have to report that music to a different performing rights organization called SoundExchange, right? Because ASCAP and BMI BMI, they don't collect on that type of music use. They're older performing rights organizations, and they kind of have geared themselves towards the old model of the music industry, right around touring and radio play and live performance, and even though that's the same as touring, but you know what I mean. This new type of PRO, Sound Exchange, you have to sign up for that too, and you have to register your songs for that too, especially if you suspect that you're getting a lot of spins on SiriusXM, because that's money that's yours, and you have to register to collect that. Sound Exchange is actually really unique because they collect royalties that no other entity collects. The way that it's broken up is that if your song is played, 50% of the royalty goes to the copyright holder. So if you're an independent artist, you're the copyright holder. Then 45% of that royalty goes to the featured artist. So that's huge, because even if you play a cover, let's say you play an Ed Sheeran cover, and as far as BMI and ASCAP are concerned, he's the songwriter, and so he's going to get the performance royalty because that's how it's set up. The performer doesn't get paid on BMI and ASCAP. So if you're a cover artist, you're out. You're not going to get any royalties from BMI or ASCAP. But with Sound Exchange, 45% of that royalty goes to the featured artist. So if I do an Ed Sheeran cover and I perform his song, even though I'm not the songwriter, I still get 45% of the royalties from Sound Exchange because I'm the one who sang it. That's huge, especially in certain genres, or if you're a certain type of creator that does a lot of covers. You're definitely going to want to register to get that 45% featured artist royalty. And then the last 5% to equal 100% of the Sound Exchange royalty is really unique as well. That 5% goes to the session musicians. So a lot of us, recording in our homes and bedrooms, we don't have session musicians, so that would just go to the performer once again. So basically, if you're home recording and you do cover music, half of that royalty goes to you if you register on Sound Exchange. So that's huge, and a lot of artists actually don't know that at all. But that's still not everything that you need to sign up for. Just like in the beginning of this video, so far your song still isn't copyrighted, and depending on your distributor, you still might not be earning anything from YouTube. A lot of people listen to music on YouTube, and a lot of people listen to music outside of your native country. If you're in the US and you're with BMI or ASCAP, they do have agreements with foreign PROs where you can collect performance royalties from overseas, but they're not collecting the mechanical royalties from overseas. So that's two things you're still missing: mechanical overseas royalties and YouTube Content ID royalties, depending on your distributor. And that's where SongTrust comes in. SongTrust is a publishing administration service, and what they do is exactly what I described. They put your music into YouTube's Content ID, and they also collect foreign mechanical royalties, the stuff that your PROs are probably missing. And SongTrust is actually only just one option. You can also opt into CD Baby Pro, which is basically a third-party affiliate to SongTrust, and you can become covered as well. And I also know that TUNECORE has their TUNECORE publishing, which is a little different actually, but they also collect your foreign mechanicals and are basically the same thing as SongTrust. So to recap, guys, everything I'm telling you, I'm doing as well, right? I have a distributor to get my music on Spotify. I use AWOL Music because DistroKid is dead to me. I have BMI, my performing rights organization that collects my performance royalties. And then thirdly, I have Sound Exchange, and I register my songs on Sound Exchange in addition to BMI. And then I have an account with SongTrust, which takes care of collecting foreign royalties and helps with Content ID. Actually, I'm double covered with Content ID because AWOL, my distributor, collects YouTube Content ID for me, and I actually have it turned off in SongTrust because you don't want to be double collecting. It'll be confusing for YouTube. So I want to drive home one important point. All of those services, they don't actually copyright your music. Now, there's something called natural copyright, which you get in the United States, you get as a citizen. It's where if you create something, it's yours. That's called natural copyright. So if you write a song, you automatically own the copyright to that song. But when we talk about copyright in regards to the music industry and in regards of copyright protection, I'm not talking about natural copyright. What I'm talking about is registering your song with the US Copyright Office. And you can do that online. And until you register your song with the US Copyright Office, you're technically not registered as the copyright holder. You may have natural copyright because that's how it's written in the US law, but there's no actual record of it on file in the US government. So outside of music royalty collection, if you want to be fully protected from a copyright standpoint, you need to register your songs with with the US Copyright Office. I'm going to include a link in the description so that you can click it and just get sent over to the right page of the US Copyright Office. And then I'm also going to include in the description a link to everything I just said in this video, but as a PDF guide. So you don't have to watch this video over and over again. And if you forgot to take notes, that's okay. Just download the guide, and everything that I said in this video is written out in step-by-step form so that you could collect all your music royalties, you could get your songs copyrighted properly, and you just don't have to worry about whether or not you're missing something with your music career. So that's for you, totally free. It's a free download, so click the link in the description below. And if this video is helpful to you, just do me a favor and hit that like button. That really helps. And if you want to stay informed of future videos, hit the notification bell so that you can actually get notified when new uploads come up, so you won't miss any new music industry tips from this channel. And that's it, guys. Once again, my name's Ryan from the Indie Music Academy, and I hope you guys found a lot of value in this video, and I'll see you in the next one.
Damn it, now Ryan's in the front running for coolest video I've seen tonight.
It's tough, man. We have tough run-ins for the coolest video of the night every week.
Oh, that info really got me jazzed up. Checking, I'm gonna be checking that SOUNDEXCHANGE. Sounds like something that those who are out there performing covers, and the way that they are setting it up so the songwriters are getting that 50%, and their songs are getting out there more. If people are covering your song, it's why you want to make a great song. You want to make a song everybody covers, and you're getting 50% if they take that approach.
Yeah, and if you do a cool version of somebody's song, I mean, they're, like I said, they're getting half, and the people who are performing are getting half. I mean, the fact that the studio musicians are only getting 5%, that's one thing, but the featured artist getting 45%, you know, that featured artist can determine who gets, you know, because a lot of times it's a whole band.
Well,
playing, right?
and you're seeing a readjustment of the cake cutting, because in the old days, the record company cut you a piece, and they took the cake. Now they're coming up with new ways to carve the value of the content.
Yep. And my thought would be that then, you know, the featured artist, if it is a band of say 4 people, 5 people, whatever, they would get that full 50% because they're getting the 5% as the studio musicians and the 45% for the featured artist, you know, baking into that. But again, it depends on how it's going, because if it's a singer supported by whatever, that's different.
You're talking a 50-50 split on performance rights versus song rights.
Yeah.
And between CD Baby and ASCAP and BMI, like, he finally cleared my head about the real differences, because one is about distribution rights and is tied more to the internet, where they only track DistroKid only tracks certain things like YouTube saturation. If you're serious about like putting your stuff all over the internet and having it played, you want that to be represented across the board and calculated. The non-interactive stuff he was talking about with Pandora, you know, your song could be getting played like all day, and your distribution service is not going and chasing after those. Whereas ASCAP and BMI, they're more diligent when it comes to people playing certain songs in a club or at a bar. You know, we talked about that the other night. Like, it's the club owners who have to make sure that if a band's playing and they're playing covers, that the club takes care of making sure licenses are in place, and the royalties for the cover are going to the proper places. It doesn't work. It's a system that constantly is not being enforced and broken. Sometimes the bar owners start feeling like, they're the victims in this inefficient system.
Right. And the main thing is, again, everybody's just focused on the crowd having a good time, right? So like the bar owners want the seats filled. They want the people there having fun. So they want the
want
band
to
to come
sell
in.
drinks.
Of course. So like, by the band coming in and playing covers, that keeps everybody engaged. They know the words, they know how to dance to it, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one big selling point for covers. You get a original band in there if they're doing some originals and then also filling in with covers so that they're keeping everyone engaged, throwing originals at them here and there to see how the crowd feels about it. That's one thing. But a band that comes in and just does all originals all night, you really need a following to make that work, unless the venue has a very built-in crowd that is loves to just get new music all the time. That's fine too. But you don't always get a receptive crowd for that.
Why do you think bar owners started heading towards jukeboxes, where all of that right stuff is built into the jukebox? Sure, we will put your jukebox in and we will collect our bar money from that. That's why they started to put them more and more into the bars.
Now, jukeboxes show up every night, and you don't have to pay them every night. You just feed them electricity, but they don't get the crowd going the way a band does. I mean,
exactly.
That's the trade-off.
The bar that decides the jukebox does not. People don't come here to see a jukebox. They just spend their money while they're playing pool and drinking. But a band, if the band is hot and attracting a crowd, the crowd comes with the band and buys the drinks. And
that's the thing, is a lot of the management does recognize, depending on the place, of course, but they do generally recognize if the band themselves have a draw, like they have their people that showed up, and if their people show up and they spend money and buy drinks and make the crowd even better, because all of a sudden more people who show up are like, oh, I'm gonna hang out here because this is where everybody is, or whatever, that. And
the bar is happy to pay the band at that point. If that band brought in thousands of dollars of revenue in sales, then paying them $400 or $500 hasn't been a stretch. Most bands don't get paid equal to the amount of work it takes to play in a bar. You're never gonna make your living just doing that. Like, it's
I think most of them aren't.
It's a promotional tool.
For most of them, it's a hobby. To be honest, like most of the guys that I work with, at least, even the guys who do the bands very, very seriously, they have day jobs and they do this as a hobby. And the fact that they're getting paid is kind of icing on the cake. They're there for the crowd and to get on stage and play to the crowd. The fact that they're getting paid for it is kind of like incidental. It's kind of like covering the expenses and what have you. It's not like any of the guys are getting like rich on this stuff at this level, at least. But I mean, some of the bands,
residual.
Like you said,
it's residual income.
Sometimes you said it's only a couple $100s that the band has to split among themselves, but sometimes it's a couple $1,000 that the band gets to split between themselves. So it depends on the level of the venue, and it depends on how, the draw that the band brings. And again, the important point is if the place is booking the band and they're booking them year after year after year, they know, who their regulars are that are in the place, and they know what a Tuesday night looks like, or whatever, whatever night it is, they know what a Saturday night looks like generally. So when your band shows up, if all of a sudden they're 30% above what they expected, they know that has to do with you guys and they want you back. So that's and that can also change the arrangement for you in a good way.
Yeah, they will book you before they try out a new band.
Absolutely. You could become booked more often. You could become the house band, what have you. I mean, there's a number of ways that can work out. Also, preferential booking, where a lot of times we have just as a sound company, we end up getting booked by, early in January, we're booked for the year as far as Saturdays go, because Saturdays are so quick to fill up on the calendar. And for so many of these places, they start like beginning of the year or even the end of this year. They'll, December, they're already starting to think about getting everything booked for the following year, because, winter's going to be slow, and then it'll start getting fast, more busy towards the summertime, and then midsummertime, boom, everything's getting really
plus
crazy.
Some of your events are tied around like a holiday events, so certain times where bookings are all full, it's usually like way ahead of time, because it's Christmas.
And the thing about bar gigs is the fact that it doesn't matter rain or shine, because you might not have as big a crowd on a rainy night, but they're not going to cancel a gig necessarily because of a rainy night. Whereas outdoor gigs in the middle of summertime, you're on a field with no cover, then they're going to cancel that because no one's going to be sitting out in the field in the rain to see, your band come out and play. So they're going to cancel that just for safety, because nobody should be out in the lightning anyway. But, we do get lucky with a lot of the weather going on where, we had, 9 gigs booked within 12 days in the middle of July, and 8 of them were fine. One got rained out. It happened to be right in the middle. So it gave us that little break where it was going to be 4 days in a row, but then we had 3 in a row and that last one canceled. It was like, get a little break right there and jump back in for the next couple.
They let me breathe.
I mean, we would have made it if we needed to, no problem. But at the same time, it was like we saw that the weather was looking bad, and it was like, oh man, it's looking like crap. Like what we didn't want is to drive all the way down there, because that was like a good hour and a half, 2-hour drive to get there for me. So it probably would have been
that's
more like
an
3
expense
hours for Mike.
at that point.
3 hours for Mike, but drive all the way down there and then find out that it's a rain out, that would suck. So that's where it's like, before you leave the house, we're going to make sure. And they made sure, and it was canceled by the venue.
Yeah, it's an expense if you traveled to not work.
Yeah, and they had a potential rain date for 2 weeks later, but they didn't book it in time, so it didn't get on there. But they're going to go ahead and make up the gig in a month or 2, so it'll work out. But yeah, that was Indie Music Academy, and some very good info there. And I'm definitely going to revisit that video with each of the bands that I work with, because that basically, like you said, it sums it up. And also in the links for that video, it's going to have, like you said, the PDF that has all of it right there. It also has, the reminder of, oh yeah, this one, oh yeah, that one, oh yeah, that one. Like
I was looking at his thumbs up for descriptive organization. Like this is the kind of resources I love the most. Not only does he put all the information that he references, but we're going to start doing this.
Timestamps.
This is this is exactly like, how good resources like this are, because I actually want to review certain parts of this video, and he made it nice and easy for me.
Exactly. And that's bonus organization.
Hell yes. You get a fridge magnet.
Hey, we only had a couple of those left. Let's take it easy. But very good stuff from Audio University, right? Was that the actual
Indie Music Academy.
Indie
Music Academy. And he's growing fast.
Very cool. And again, good info all around, most useful.
Well, I think for a lot of the musicians that we know and are part of like our Band Lab audience, this is where you need to go to understand yourself as an indie artist before you go try to be a record label artist. Actually, if you learn this, you might ask yourself, do I want to be a record label artist? Because in the old days, like I said, they take most of the cake.
Yeah.
They'll pay you to make the cake, but they take the cake afterwards.
Hey, at this point, like if it's the band, like essentially splitting half of the cake at that point, I mean, I'm digging that for sure. I mean, I'm going to look into that, because I could, we could knock out 100 covers in 100 days easy, like just, knock out whatever, just and get them out there and do them in your own way so that you're making it your own. But
that's
understanding
the
with
fun
mechanical
part.
licenses and all that, this actually helps to finance the paying for mechanical licenses to actually make originals or make covers your own, to do your version of this, because it could become much bigger, not bigger, but it could become much bigger than any of your originals might have become on their own, and it might just get you into enough, get enough people listening to your stuff that you can now get your originals back out. So it's one of those things where covers can be an avenue to get to getting your originals more widely heard, where a lot of people, they look at covers, oh, I don't do covers, I only do original stuff. But everybody wants to hear your original stuff. You got
Glenn, I was that way until 2017.
Yeah.
I fought any cover my band wanted. I only did like 3 or 4. After 2017, when I did come back to Band Lab, I needed to refresh my songwriting energy, and starting to learn songs and cover them helped to remind me like how songs.
I mean, I love covers. I love doing covers just to learn the parts. I love learning covers to learn their songwriting styles. I mean, there's so many aspects of doing covers that are useful from a music production standpoint that it just, Lots of good stuff happening there. Now, the next one that we're going to look at was going to be something about the Yamaha DM7 digital mixing console. And it is here. And we're going to take a first look at it. And then we're going to go back and take a look at the channel right after this.
Hey everybody, Duke DeYoung from Vantage Pro here with Jonathan.
Senior Technical Support Engineer with Yamaha.
He's a brilliant dude. That's basically all that matters. But this is it. This is the new DM7, one of them. So, I mean, talk to us about the family, because there is a family.
Absolutely. DM7 is a series. We're super excited for this new release. We've got 2 consoles in the line, a DM7 and a DM7 Compact. Both of them are 96K operation, interoperable between the two. The DM7 comes with 120 input channels. DM7 Compact is a 72 input channel console. Both of them have the same output structure, 48 mixes, 12 matrices, and 24 DCAs plus 2 stereo buses. Both of these consoles, again, 96K operation. They both ship with a built-in 144 by 144 96K Dante card built in. In addition, we have a new PY card slot, 64 by 64 at 96K. Brings us way up from maybe an MY 16 by 16 at 48. This option, we currently have 3 cards that we're ready with. We have a MADI 64 by 64 96K dual link with SRC. We also have an AAS card as well as a MIDI GPI card, 5-pin MIDI operation, additional GPI contacts. Both of them have local I/O. The DM7 has 32 inputs and 16 outputs. The DM7 Compact has 16 inputs, 16 outputs on the back. AAS I/O on both of them. The DM7 has a 4x4 AAS I/O. The DM7 Compact has a 0x2 AAS output.
So we're standing in front of a Compact right now.
That's correct.
But there's also this lovely sidecar that's attached to it. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure is. We're really excited about this as well, new for Yamaha. This is the CTL, the control module that we've got. It's a new piece. It is control only. It is a standard Ethernet Cat5 connection and an IEC for power. It offers the ability to expand your user-defined keys, user-defined encoders, as well as 2 user-defined faders, a jog wheel. We're bringing the jog wheel back. It's cool again, maybe from PM1D, PM5D days, right? This guy is really powerful, really easy to use, and assignable for multiple features based on what you're looking at. It can be on either side of either version of the DM7 series, and it can live on its own as well. So if you want this at front of house, maybe you have some user-defined keys, but you don't want to have Dante audio at front of house. Wherever you want this to be, you can drop this in. It's a standard Ethernet connection. There's a 2-port switch on the back as well. So you can connect the DM7 to the control module, to your laptop running editor, and it's all over hardwired Ethernet single cable.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's all super modular really makes it really kind of powerful for a lot of different applications.
Absolutely.
Certainly front of house in any kind of performance venue, church, whatnot. But the fact that you can actually just drop this control module just separately anywhere, it kind of gets out of the box a little bit.
Yeah, it does. And we offer 4 SKUs out of the box. So we have the DM7, the DM7 Compact, the DM7 EX, which includes the control module and 2 pieces of really cool software we'll get into in a minute, as well as the DM7 CEX, which is the same version, just the Compact.
Okay. Before we get into features of the console, talk to us about the software, because you guys have been doing some really cool stuff there.
Yeah, we're really excited about theater and broadcast software options for DM7 series. They're optional. You can package them. The EX includes that software. You can purchase them separately, and those licenses are portable using Provisionaire Cloud. So you can move that license between desks and be able to rotate things around if you need to for whatever use case you might have. The theater software is packed with features. We've got Actor Library, which is a great way to have presets for different actors, different inputs, different people that is recallable on a global level, as well as DCA Grid, which is new for us. It's the ability to program DCA scenes for maybe line mixing in a theater application really quickly. You're able to actually track an actor through multiple scenes using the same DCA. If you've got one DCA 10 times on a scenes, you can actually track through, and that means you can update faster as well. If you need to replace an actor, add somebody to a DCA, really easy to do so quickly. The broadcast software includes 5.1 surround and a future release, as well as LUFS metering for broadcast applications, true loudness metering, multiple types, so you can have the BBC type as standard, and different sensitivities as well, so you can make sure it's application specific and correct for what you're doing.
And the broadcast software, to me, actually has a lot more application outside of the theater software. because you say actor, and actor means specific thing to theater.
Yeah.
But in a performance venue, in a church in particular, we have a lot of actors on stage, right? We have electric guitarists, we have bass guitarists, and especially if we've got volunteer musicians every week, like each of your actors might actually just be a different musician playing the same instrument.
Absolutely, or maybe the same person playing different instruments, right? So you've got the ability to replace a guitar. If they brought their Strat today, that's fine. Gibson tomorrow, not a problem. You can recall all those presets, and you've got predefined EQ, compression, all those things can be recalled very easily. You also maybe have 6 singers downstage that could be different every week, right? Rotating lead choir, you can just replace people in. You've got all the presets for all of your different potential singers. You can just drop them in on a day-by-day basis.
And these presets aren't just like I've saved their EQ in a library, like it's a full...
The full processing can be captured, that's correct. The gain stays separate just because we want to make sure you've got the individual control of gain, but yeah, you're able to recall everything else. And speaking of gain, we've got the ability to have 2 inputs simultaneously available to the strip. There's an A and a B input now, so you can have a backup microphone potentially for a podium. You can switch over to it with a user-defined key, and everything else stays the same, just a separate head-amp control.
Yeah, so besides the fact that this thing just looks amazing, I mean, the screen is probably one of the best screens I've ever seen on a Yamaha console, which it's just sharp as all get out. But there's a lot of new features packed into this if you're familiar with Yamaha consoles in the past. So give us some of the highlights of some of the kind of the new stuff in this console.
Yeah, we took a new approach with this design. The CentralLogic's M7CL, LS9, we've kind of moved up from there, so we're now screen-based, and that's really where we want to focus our energy. The screen, nice, beautiful glass touchscreen, multi-touch as well. The encoders now live below the screen. There's 1 row of encoders per fader bank per bay. We're able to map these encoders to do anything on screen as well as some fixed applications. When you're in a 1-channel view of the desk, you're able to look at what you're seeing and touch what you want to control. If you're looking at the EQ, you want to affect the EQ, you touch the EQ section, and you might notice that these LEDs are going to change based on what you're doing. So these colors are moving around. That means that these encoders are mapping to whatever processing you're actually working with. So for example, when we have the EQ selected, you might see red, orange, yellow, green, matches the 4-band parametric EQ up at the top.
Right.
If you grab a compressor, if you grab a gate, it all maps that direction. It also works well for maybe mixes. You now have control of 12 mixes from these encoders right on the front of the screen. You also have something called encoder mode, which allows you to basically park the encoders to do one specific thing. Maybe that's a head amp, maybe that's a pan. You're able to map 5 different controls and be able to then grab that. It's always available right at your fingertips. You don't have to go find it on the screen.
Well, and I think that's one of the critical things is anytime you're going to go highly visual based, almost like a giant iPad, right? You've got to have those connectors between the information on screen and the tactile surface.
Absolutely.
And so being able to match those things color for color gives you kind of a quicker at a glance ability to go, oh, I need that one.
Correct. Yeah, it's really a way to give positive feedback as to what the user is actually working with at any time. You can look down, you might see the rainbow, you might see only orange, you might see only purple. You want to make sure you understand what you're touching, what you're grabbing quickly as well. You know, you don't want to have to always look down. If you can see the colors, you know what you're working with.
So besides that, what are some of the other new features unique to the DM7 line?
Yeah, we've got a really cool new feature called split mode. Both the DM7 and the DM7 Compact can be essentially split into 2 consoles simultaneously, one piece of hardware. So the DM7, again, 120 input channels. When you go into split mode, it makes 2 60-channel consoles.
Okay.
You share the output structure, 12-channel resolution of mixes. You can have 12 and 36, 24 and 24, whatever combination you might need. The matrices and DCAs get split between the 2 engines, and the 2 stereo buses become 1 and 1. But you're able to have 2 separate instances of the DM7 software inside of the console running simultaneously, and you're able to switch between the A and the B engine from the screen. You can have on a DM7 both screens looking at one engine, or simultaneously having both available. You can also maybe have DM7 control. You can have the macOS or Windows application running you know, on your computer. You can have both screens set up for the A side and
iPads
then maybe
as well,
exactly,
right?
yes, absolutely. Stage Mix is also doing the same thing. You can select engines, be able to run remotely. Maybe you've got both screens running front of house and a monitor guy on stage with an iPad. You can do all of that directly from there.
So what is that practical application? Because I mean, the idea of splitting a console in 2, you might go, why not just get 2 consoles?
Right, yeah. So it's a price point, right? Approachability. You're able to to save some cost by having one console do two things. The ability to separate all of your processing is really important, especially maybe for a front of house and a broadcast application. You could have a broadcast guy in a booth on the DM7 editor on a Mac, just sitting there, being able to mix, recall their own scenes. You've got your own scene library. All the processing is discrete. The only thing you share is potentially head amps if you have them patched in both sides, and that's where gain compensation comes in. We're able to digitally trim, not impacting the other.
Yeah. I'm afraid to ask, what else? I mean, that's so
We've
cool.
taken a couple of features down from Rivage. This really wants to sit between the CLQL and the Rivage. First of all, the 96K operation, right? That improved sonic performance really makes a difference. We've got refresh preamps in the back of this. This is the console for Rio. Rio D1 and D2 are fully compatible with the DM7 series. With current firmware, both of them will run at 96K. You don't have to replace your I/O. If you want to upgrade to DM7, you can slap it in.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, slap it in, a couple of Dante ports, 96K operation with current firmware, which is super exciting. We've got premium racks, just like CLQL series, but now instead we've got 64 DSP slots available to the console.
Only 64?
Only 64, up from 8, less than 382. Now you've got the ability to patch premiums like your Porticos, like your Comp 369s, maybe you've got a 276 that you want to add. Primary source enhancer on every lav, no problem for 32 channels. So we're able to bust that in. It's all utilized this direction. You can see your gas gauge up at the top. You know where you're at. You know how much room you have to expand. On top of the 64 premium slots, we've got 8 effects legacy Yamaha plugins for any kind of effect engine that you might need, and 32 graphic EQs all available at the same time. On top of that, your input channels have some premium dynamic plugins. For example, maybe you've got a Comp 260 and then you want to grab a diode bridge compressor as well, FET limiter, things like that available at the same time in addition to the premium plugins.
Right. And as you mentioned earlier, I mean, why you would need more processing, one could ask. But you did mention earlier there are still the card slots, and so if you did need to add Waves or any of those other plugins servers, that's totally doable.
Absolutely, yep. This ships standard with VST rack elements, so you're able to do external plugins over USB. You could absolutely go SoundGrid with Dante, going to Waves that direction, and because the I/O on the Dante card is higher than the I/O on the console, you've got the ability to run external plugins without stealing any of your input channels.
And I think kind of one of the cool, really underrated screens on this is this window right here, because the user-defined presets that you can program in here, like they're pretty deep.
Yeah, so the utility screen is a nice sidecar for us to be always available and running its own thing, if you will. You've got all these user-defined keys, got another 48 UDKs on the utility screen, all custom assignable, really easy to program this on the main bay over here on this side as well as on the DM7 full. You've got monitoring here, an A and a B monitor bus. Scene list over here, you can have your scene list always up and running. You can see what's next. You can scroll through, recall, store, all those kinds of things are available at all times. Save load feature is on this side of the desk, just so you've got the 2 USB ports above, you're looking directly at it, as well as with the broadcast software, the LUFS meter is there as well, so you're able to look at what your metering is like without stealing what your console is doing in front. We've also got something new called AI Assist.
Okay, I'm listening.
Brand new feature. It is currently in beta. We're really excited about it. There's 2 different assist types. We have head amp assist and fader assist. Head amp assist is this incredible piece of technology that has the ability to intelligently sample an input, and it's going to take a guess at what it is. So if you show up to a gig, don't have a console file, you just want to get going, right? Plug everything in, get it turned on. Turn on HA Assist. What it's going to do is sample those inputs. It'll do its best to label it. It'll set the head amp. Then if you go to fader mode, you can have it intelligently attempt to mix those inputs together into 4 groups.
That's terrifying.
It's amazing. We want to kind of call it a third arm, right?
Yeah.
It's the ability to have the piece of software behind the console, built into the console, no internet connection needed, running at the same time. Yeah, it's really impressive what it's able to do.
So it's like the festival starter.
Yeah.
Basically.
Essentially, yeah.
No, that's cool. And I can see some real good application in that, like head amp control especially. I know a lot of times when we're in churches and we've got volunteer audio guys, gain seems to be one of the hardest things to kind of get right. And so being able to set some parameters, hit auto gain, having it like dial in and then turning it off, it's like, oh my gosh, what a lifesaver for everybody, especially the monitors, all the monitors. Like now their gains are right, their levels are good.
Absolutely, yeah. We're taking this, you can kind of think of TF where there was the gas gauge of a head amp control. This is automated. It's really designed to find a target voltage range for it. It wants to get everything into a sweet spot on the desk, so you've got things set for you before you even start.
We'll talk more about this in other times, but like my head's already exploded. So I mean, there's just so much cool stuff in the DM7. We'd love to talk to you more about it. If it fits your application, there's just a lot of horsepower here. So visit us on our website, vantageproav.com, or if you want to reach out to us, hit us up, hello@vantageproav.com.
Oh, and that is at Vantage Pro AV on YouTube.
Oh yeah, and we're going to talk about this more.
Oh, yeah. Well, the whole reason why I got it, I was like, oh, I want it. You have the benefit of playing with the PreSonus equipment, and that's at a much more affordable level. That's good for stage, studio. This feels like a piece of studio equipment. It does look solid.
Oh yeah,
but I don't think 20 grand. I don't think I'd want to put this on a stage unless the job was paying enough to ensure that I wasn't going to break it.
Basically at that level, yeah, I'd be thinking of the speaker arrays, like rather than just bringing subs and mains and monitors, etc. I'm thinking you're bringing the arrays where you've got like, you know, that big J stack that you see at the festivals, where there's, you know, basically the ones that we use as mains are just stacked, you know, from the ceiling coming down. There's like 8 of them coming down, all in like an array that bends down like a J, so that it like bends down and like hits everybody from up there. And you got a second stack halfway out that has that time delay, so that the people out in the far end are getting the music at the same time without that time delay of it coming from the main stack. Like that's when you're at that level of getting things set up. But so many good concepts that are included in there, and that AI looking and, you know, guessing at the things, that's big. And with the PreSonus, I mean, one of the things that I do all the time is to get a basic mix. Like somebody else, you know, we'll have something recorded and we're looking at it. First thing I'll do is just go in and say, okay, you know, the bass, okay, that go to the track, go to the monitor and say, oh, that's an electric bass, boom, and it sets up an EQ, it sets up the whole channel strip to be set up for an electric bass sound, and it already sounds 100 times better. And then you go to the next channel, and, oh, kick drum, okay, and that's a kick drum, and it sets up an EQ for a kick drum, and like everything just jumps out and sounds so much better immediately when you customize each track that way.
When you save on the PreSonus, it does do a snapshot, right? If you
it's
have,
called a scene, they call it. Yeah, like you basically can just say, okay, this scene.
But the scene does record, like the only thing that the snapshot didn't record is the gain, right? That's what he said. The gain, because you got knobs there, so like you want to have that manual override. It's nice if it can snapshot it in motorized faders. I'm sure at 20 grand.
I'm
those
sure it
faders
does.
are motorized.
Exactly. And that's where with the PreSonus, even the one that we use, that is not 20 grand, it's much less than that. But the one that we used also, when you go to load a scene on the computer, it says, oh, like, do you want us to set those faders the way it was in the scene? And you say yes, and all of a sudden those motorized faders snap to the positions that they were in the file. So when you had it set in the file, whatever you were doing with your faders, it's all immediately snapped back to what it was. And also with the you know, with the PreSonus board, I'm sure with that one, when you go to different scenes, you can say, okay, here's the main mix, and it shows you where all the faders are. And then you could say, okay, what about what's getting sent to the reverb on FX1? You hit FX1 and boom, the faders will snap and show you how much of each channel is getting sent to the reverb channel, the reverb sub channel. And then you can go same thing, delay, and then you can, like, you know, snap and just have a look at everything very quickly just by going boom, 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 boom. You can immediately see, okay, here's the main mix, here's how much of everything's getting sent to reverb, here's how much of everything is getting sent to delay, and you know, just go through a couple of things like that, and immediately you can see the whole setup of your board. And oh, now I need to go back in and say, okay, this vocal was too, you know, whatever it was, there was a problem, it was too boomy, or it was too high, too shrill, too much.
Well, yes, you make individual instrument adjustments.
Oh yeah,
but you want to be able to snapshot a song, like a song setup.
Yeah. Well, even in this case, it's more of a band setup. So it's okay. We know that, you know, channels 1 through 4 are going to be the vocals, and then 7 is the bass, and 8's going to be the guitar, and 9, 10 is going to be the keyboards, and then everything from 11 on is going to be all the drum mics, including overheads. you can set it up like that and then immediately just jump in and start, okay, here's this, here's that. You got a couple channels left over if you got guest vocalists or you got a horn player coming in or whatever it is. And you can be flexible to be able to jump in and set things up real quick. But the main thing is getting each channel set for the type of instrument or vocal that it's going to be, and having it be able to have the right EQ sweep and the right set of effects set on it just to get a good baseline. And you can adjust from there. As we said, somebody's voice is going to be higher, someone's going to be lower, different sweet spots, different points you want to cut out. So all of those are adjustments you would make after the fact.
If you plug everything consistently, that template you save, that band comes back next week, they're plugging into the same inputs.
You just said it right there.
That template.
That template that you saved.
You
that saves
start
you
right
hours.
back where you left off.
That saves you hours next time. And Mike does that all the time, where he has templates for each of the bands that we work with, so that when you jump in, you don't just pull up the template and say, okay, we're done.
Oh, I would imagine Mike has backups of those templates just in case.
You got a template, you got a backup of the template, but also when you load the template, it's load the template, and then, okay, now we do the sound check and we go to each person and see what they're hearing. And a lot of it comes down to the monitor mix as well. Like he was mentioning with the guy holding the boom mic and the guy spotting the boom mic guy, but we also have, the main sound guy who's dealing with front of house to make sure that the sound coming out the mains and the subs is what we want to hear in the venue. Then you've also got a guy doing the monitor mixes, where we have Bill doing it at this point, where we've got six different monitor mixes, or at least where we've got 4 or 5 physical monitors on the ground, and then other people who have in-ear monitors where you need individual mixes for each one. So you go to each one. Okay, what do you want to hear? Oh, I want to hear drums and a little bit of keys and all the vocals. Okay,
well, see, that's a nice convenience for the performing musicians.
Yeah.
Being able to have in-ear monitors where you can hear the thing you're jamming to and focused on that nowadays. Tell me you wish you didn't have that in the old days. It sucked in the old days. I could never hear myself. I could never hear the drummer.
And that was the thing, is it has to do with mixing stage volume. And if you do have monitors, being able to control what's going into it. Because like you said, in a lot of cases, if you're going to be singing at all, you're going to want all of the vocals coming into your monitor at some point so that you can hear the guys who are singing, even if everything else is going crazy and whatever, you can still hear cutting through the vocals, so you can work with that. A lot of times people want nothing but themselves so that they can hear plenty of themselves coming back to them, even if they're, if you're playing keyboard, for example, and you can't hear yourself, that's terrible, because you don't know if you're out of key. You don't know whatever's going on.
Those people who are asking to hear more of themselves in their monitors are probably the ones who don't feel like they hear themselves while they're playing.
It can be, but it can also be that the on stage volume, a lot of times, like if you have the lead guitar player, just, not to get down on guitar players, but the lead guitar player is usually very loud on stage because that amp is very loud. Like for them to get the sound they want, they might have to be on 8 or 9 on the amp. So like they
want to go to 11
on the solos, but before that they can hang out at 9. They're all right with that. But
well, I got a foot pedal for the solo.
Oh yeah, click. You get the massive overdrive. But the point there is just that you've got that going on, but at the same time everybody else is doing their thing behind there and making it all work together. So you got to have the volumes all under control to some degree, and be able to have everything harnessed in its range where it should be. But again, each one having its own EQ is just such a great starting point compared to just starting at a board where everything is 0. Everything at 0 is great, because that's a good place to start. And then normally you would dial in each channel. You would focus on that guy and calibrate it. Right. It's easier to
calibrate up than it is to calibrate down. Like if you're having to pull back volume to find the level, it's much easier for you to pull up the volume, and you will hear when you hear it properly. But if you pull it back, your brain is doing compensating. When you hear loud music, your brain starts to compensate that loudness sometimes, and your pulling back might not actually be as accurate as you think.
Yeah. And if you can't hear yourself, I mean, a lot of times people make all kinds of mistakes when they can't hear themselves, because they can't hear it. So they start playing louder, but then the people who do hear them, it sounds like you're just pounding over the top of everybody. So it's important to understand, even if you don't hear yourself clearly, if there's a good sound guy on board and he's mixing the main mix, trust that your sound is getting out there and you're playing what you're playing, focused on the mechanics of what you're doing rather than focused on the sound of what you're doing.
And that goes back to consensus, what we were talking about. When you have multiple ears on a mix, you can trust the mix more.
It definitely makes a difference for sure. And it's where, you can get consensus then of what sounds right and what needs to be tweaked and what would sound different.
Especially if you're getting it from different perspectives. You being able to go with an iPad and hear what it sounds like over here in the back or on the sides and tweak can really get a good full sound across the whole audience.
Indeed. Now we have something coming up next year about a cheat code for better arrangements, doing the two loop rule.
And when it comes to cheating in music, I'm in those camps these days where some people would, me as a keyboardist using samples to play instruments, some people consider that cheating. It's like, oh, you did not play that saxophone. And my question is did it sound like a saxophone? Did it work? And if so, even if I cheated at that point, I don't feel like a cheater because I still got to play it on something.
Right. Not to mention the fact that with a keyboard, you can also transpose. So you could do the double cheat where you do that, and then while you're playing it, you transpose the keyboard.
I don't like to cheat that way, not because I consider it cheating so much as I just don't need to. If I do need to play something in a key and I feel like, oh, I'm not comfortable in that key, if I'm not motivated enough to get comfortable in that key, then I'm not really the musician I want to be.
And that is a key where, seeing that as the motivation, and that's where if there are keys that you don't normally work with or that you're
there's a lot of keys that I want to be good at.
find a song that inspires you to get good at that key because, I want to play that song and I don't want to have to cheat to do it. Use that as the motivation to learn that key because that can be very helpful. But in the meantime, if you do understand that with any song, if you're trying to do a pentatonic solo, for example, you're pretending.
Well, see, there you're not just talking keys, you're talking modes.
Yeah.
Modes are still blowing my brain.
You're starting with, let's say you wanted to play something that was a major it's a major pentatonic riff that you want to play, and it's in a key that you don't normally like. If you were to transpose it to where it was in G flat, that's all the black notes. So you could just transpose it to where it's in G flat major and play all those, or in E flat minor. And those are all black notes. So you can just sit there with the black notes and do whatever you want. And it's just black notes. So it's super easy because there's nothing getting in your way. You're not focused on what you have to sharpen or flatten or whatever. You're just basically playing those notes, playing all the black notes. And that's a pentatonic scale. And you can just go up and down and do little solos, do little riffs, do little ideas, and add embellishments to your song.
Accents.
Very easily on a keyboard. Accents.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's all about, again, G flat major or E flat minor, because those are the keys that use just black notes for the full pentatonic. But as just a little, as I digress. But what we were talking about there was a cheat code.
Well, arranging. What I liked with is, composing and arranging are two topics that I really want to go down rabbit holes on. And this cheat code for better arrangements, the two loop rule, I suspect I know what he's going to suggest because I've done it a few times.
And that's why we do it.
And this is actually another channel that I found while you were gone, and he's now in our arsenal of channels. Good stuff. And he plays with a lot of different DAWs.
Yeah, it's important to be flexible. And then, if you learn everything on one DAW, it's important to understand how to apply that information and that knowledge to another DAW to make that work. And in this case, we're definitely going to see what he's got here. He's back. Oh, nope. Here we go.
Arrangement rule that I guarantee will have you creating powerful arrangements and eliminating the challenge of not knowing what to do next when you have something. And this something could be a loop, a set of chords, doesn't matter. This rule is called the 2-loop rule, and here's how it works. Let's start with a loop. We'll do a piano melody. And instead of just doing chords, I'm gonna do a melody. I'm also gonna add some drums. I have a kick. I have this deep snare. I also have this cool little effect that we can put on every other snare to make it sound like it's breathing. Now it's at this point where everything always gets challenging because we have a really nice loop, but what do we do to arrange this? It's one of the most overwhelming challenges in music production. All we have to do is use the 2-loop rule and the song will arrange itself. The rule is that the arrangement has to change every 2 loops of the chords because our ears naturally expect songs to change every 2 loops of the main instruments, which is usually the chords. So I'm gonna mute the drums and let's focus on the chords. Here's 1 loop of the chords. And then here's 2 loops of the chords, but the easiest way to use this rule is just arrange 8 loops of the chords and then color code every 2 loops. So we can visually see at which points throughout the arrangement that we're going to develop the arrangement, or in other words, add a change. So I'm going to start my song with just this piano melody here, and it's going to loop twice. But 2 loops in, when we get to this section, something's got to change. The only way to change an arrangement is to add an instrument or add expression to an existing instrument, or remove an instrument or reduce expression of an existing instrument. I'm going to add our drums to this next section, and I'm going to loop them. Now the transition right here, it sounds good, but there are 2 sides to every transition. There's the exit point, which goes that way, and then there's the entry point of the transition, which is right here. The drums cover the exit point, but for this entry point, I'm going to add a couple effects that are going to help enhance that and make it apparent that that's a transition and new section of song. In my opinion, it's those transition effects that really help a song define its setting. So now that we added these drums here, these 2 loops are good now. We don't have to add any other thing to this section to make it interesting. We can just move on to the next section here. So now we're on the next 2 loops. What do? Well, remember, we can either add instruments and expression to increase the energy, or remove instruments or reduce expression to reduce the energy. We're so early in the song that I can keep increasing the energy. So what I'm going to do is increase expression to the drums for this next 2 loops. Before, the drums are kind of quiet. And that's on purpose, because I have plenty of room to add things like hi-hats and a bigger, more present clap snare. So alone, just by increasing the expression of the drums, I can add even more energy to this section by adding a bass. And although this is all technically enough to increase the energy, I feel like adding a counter melody, because that'll help the main melody not exhaust. So, exit side of the transition's good. Let's add a little drum fill to the entry side. I'm I'm getting so excited. So here we are at the fourth section of the song, the fourth section of 2 loops of the chords. We can either keep increasing the energy of the arrangement like we've been, or we can begin decreasing. Now there's no right or wrong answer regarding whether we increase or decrease energy at this point. But I could tell you this, since all of our major instruments are already in this section, it'll be really, really satisfying if we reduce energy and go back into just the chords. And to make this transition even more satisfying, which by the way, is one of my all-time favorite transitions to make, which is going from high energy to nothing. We take all the instruments and cut them out and leave them empty for that last bar before you get to that next transition. And then make a little drum fill. I like making these drum fills where I take the snare and I move it forward a couple beats. And I'll do a little drum fill, but it needs one more thing. A lot of producers like to do like a crash cymbal or something there, but I think this is way deeper and it just captures the soul. Isn't that pretty? Now this is a pretty significant part of the song because what are we gonna do now? Well, this all depends on what kind of song we're making. If this was a radio pop song, I would take all of this and just repeat it and maybe make little changes in the second half. But I'm an EDM guy, so what I have to do here is start building up to the drop. And the way that would happen is we would have to take 2 more loops, and this entire section here will be the breakdown. And then the drop would happen right here. And we'll make this the color gold because it's like the pot of gold at the end of the arrangement. And so now what we do here is really important because this is where we're going to start introducing the excitement of a drop. So I'm going to take this piano melody, which is kind of exhausting itself at this point. It's like, okay, we get it. I heard it 8 times already. So I'm just going to take these and we're going to put them on a different instrument. And I'm going to give that melody a break for the entire duration of this build-up. So let's take this, which by the way, the new instrument is just a synth pad. And I got rid of the melody that was over top of these root notes because I'm just over it at this point. And what we can do now is just go straight chords. Now listen to how pretty this shift in dynamics is. Isn't that wonderful? Watch this, I'm just gonna keep applying the principles of the rule where every 2 bars something's got to change. Let's go ahead and bring back in our drums. So we have a break with no drums and then the drums are going to come in. I'm going to enhance these chords for the second 2 bars because if they stay the same, it's going to get boring. Let's make these duck and get people really pumped up. And yeah, we need drums here, but I don't want to go back into the same rhythm. I'm going to make a drum roll. So now watch this. One of my favorite shifts in dynamics where we go loud to quiet and then to loud again right before the drop would happen here. That's so pretty. And then the craziest drop should happen here, but I didn't make a drop. Like you can't fail if you follow that 2-loop rule. It is a golden arrangement rule. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this lesson and you would like to learn more about learning music production the right way, visit my website in the description below and enroll in my EDM Bootcamp course program. This program offers a structured path to learning music production and also comes with access to my inner circle where you can ask me questions and share your songs with me for feedback. Right now, you can get a free consultation for the EDM Bootcamp with me, and I won't be offering free consultations much longer. So go ahead and enroll below, and I'll see you in there.
Really liking his channel.
Mike was still off, yeah.
You know what I like is seeing his energy and his exuberance as he's putting it together. He's having fun with what he does, and he gives great tips. Like his arrangement tips complement Samurai's, because what Samurai was suggesting earlier, he just rephrased it as like giving it energy, adding extra layers. These are all parts of arranging.
It also made it more of a formula where every 2 measures, which just, it's easy to remember. Just, you know, if you had something that you're working on and you had 8 bars or something and it starts to sound stale by the end, just think every 2 measures you're making a change. And it doesn't have to be a big change. It could even be just bringing down a couple of the instruments to let the others shine more, you know, and then switching it.
With a recipe like that, to the listener, it's like taking steps. Every 2 measures, I'm taking a step. The song walks along.
Exactly. It helps give motion, which is nice.
Very cool. So that was at Alex Rome over on YouTube. Been checking his channel out for the last couple of weeks. I like the arrangement advice.
Absolutely. And again, it's, you know, it's simple concepts and it's stuff that you might say, oh, well, that just, you know, makes sense or whatever. But, you know, it's something to be aware of. And when you hear it happening, now you're going to hear it in other songs and you're going to be like, I never noticed that before, but it's like, oh, that was 2 measures of this and then boom, and then 2 measures of this and then boom. You know, you'll see that happen a lot.
Well, the more you notice it, the more you'll implement it, because you'll notice what it's doing, and it's carrying you through the song.
Yeah, and even if it's not those specific ones, and even if it's not every 2 measures, you'll notice that sort of thing. Is the song gaining energy, losing energy? What's changing? You know, what did they add? What did they take out? Those are all instances where you can get that whole different feel going on. It's very cool. Alex Rome, an excellent page where we have a lot of stuff there, and we'll be back there as well. I have a feeling that with all the other pages that we talk about that have, you know, subjects for a lot of different topics for our conversations, I have a feeling we're going to hit a lot of that as well. Very good stuff. Now the one that we have next is on how Billy Strings plays so fast with a bluegrass guitar lesson. So that's something different we haven't done recently, but we'll bring up the page right after we're done here. But for now, it's how does Billy Strings play so fast?
We have these big cultural events that will bring in tons of people to the genre. We say, yeah, but not like that. Like maybe don't come into bluegrass that way.
Yeah, it's like, did you have to put gauges in your ears, son?
Did I actually say that? I'm thinking that's a deep fake, man. Some of you may have seen the video that clip was pulled from. Why do some people hate Billy Strings? So the conversation was kind of framed negatively, right, as to why so many people hate Billy Strings or seem to hate Billy Strings. But today, we're actually going to focus on Billy in a positive light, and I want to talk about why so many people love this guy. You know, it's easy for people that are inside of the bluegrass community to kind of throw shade on these new artists that are honestly really technically amazing. You can't argue with their music whatsoever, but they bring new people to the community that don't look like the old people in the community, right? And that's definitely the case with Billy. But the thing is, Billy's kind of like, I don't want to say a wolf in sheep's clothing, he's kind of the opposite of that, right? He's like a sheep in wolf's clothing. Because Billy is so steeped in the tradition of bluegrass flat picking. He always quotes that Doc Watson's music is one of the biggest influences, if not the biggest influence on his playing. And I think the fact that Billy is tied to that deep tradition of flat picking really makes sense for why he's such a virtuosic artist and why so many new people really appreciate Billy for who he is. A lot of those people don't know who Doc Watson is, that love Billy Strings and fall in love with his music, but they're impressed by that style of guitar playing because it's so technical, it's so precise, it's so fast. So today, I'm going to dive headfirst into what does make Billy Strings such a technical virtuoso on the guitar, and it's definitely tied to those roots and traditions that I was talking about earlier. We're going to really dive into some of the technical aspects and things in the right hand that I think you can start to incorporate into your playing if you're impressed by Billy's strings and you want to play more like him. It goes without saying that there are so many examples of Billy's playing that we could analyze to showcase his technical prowess on the instrument. So there's definitely something that I notice in Billy's technique every time I watch these clips where he's playing at blistering tempos. It has to do with his right hand, and it's called upstroke escape picking. Now you might be asking yourself, what is upstroke escape picking, Hayes? And for the rest of this video, by the way, that is such a mouthful to say, I'm going to call it USX. And guess what? That term was actually given to us by one of the greatest guitar YouTubers out there, Troy Grady. He's got a website called Cracking the Code, and Troy has really dove headfirst into analyzing the right hands of some of the greatest guitar players out there to give us this terminology and system to attack speed playing on the guitar. So when I watch Billy's playing, he falls right into this USX camp that I see Troy talking about on his channel all the time. So what is upstroke escape picking? Troy developed this term to describe right hand motion where downstrokes are trapped between two adjacent strings, but upstrokes are free of the strings and allow you to shift to a different string. Now I know that sounds like a lot, but let me demonstrate it here for you. So upstroke escape picking involves this kind of supinated right hand where we kind of point our pinky toward the top of the guitar, and you can see that my downstroke is trapped between the strings, but when I come through an upstroke, my pick is free of the strings, and if I wanted to, I could keep playing on that string, or after each upstroke, my hand is free of the strings so it can shift to a different string. So if that still sounds confusing to you, let's look at Billy putting this to use in the infamous R Vinyl session of Dust in a Baggie.
20 long years for some dust in a baggie.
So the first thing that you notice is Billy's right hand is actually completely covered by the microphone when he launches into this lick. But I've seen him use this motion so many times before, and I can tell from the angle of his wrist and the way that he's moving his arm that he is definitely using USX picking in this example. So if we look at the tab to this, you can see that the first two measures are just kind of this chromatic descending phrase, kind of like in G Mixolydian, right? Now, for a lot of us, our minds are already blown, right? We could spend the next year kind of unpacking that lick. But with USX right hand motion, I think it's going to make it a lot easier for you. Let me show you that lick again, but with a better right hand angle so you can see exactly how USX comes into this. So if you notice, as I'm picking, my pick is caught between two strings after all downstrokes, but the upstrokes are free of the strings, allowing me to shift to another string. Now, if you've seen Marcel's lesson on this version of Dust in a Baggie and have run through this tab but can't quite nail that opening lick, then this USX motion is definitely something you should check out. I know in my own personal playing, in the last 2 years, it's really unlocked speed playing in general for me, so you should definitely give this one a try. Due to the nature of the mechanics of USX picking, there are some kind of parameters that we need to keep in mind for when to employ this and how we can employ it to achieve clean, fast lines. So because we get caught between two strings on downstrokes, that means we need to be able to shift to another string after passages with upstrokes. Now, if we think about that, to get to an upstroke, that means we have to play two notes or an even number of notes. So USX picking is often employed in lines that are even groupings on a string. Or another way to phrase that is 2, 4, 6, 8 notes on a single string, starting with a downstroke on a downbeat, just like this lick that Billy played. If we look at the lick here on the screen, we can see that we play 4 notes per string and then shift down to the next string after each 4-note grouping. So now that we know the mechanics behind some of Billy's speed, how do we actually apply this to our own playing outside the context of this lick? Well, because there are so many good clues in this lick, let's actually use this in the context of a different song to see if we can get it to work first. Before we kind of create our own versions of these things, it's really great to be able to use the raw material given to us by these great artists and see if we can plug it in somewhere else. So for now, I'm going to pull up a version of White House Blues and show you a couple places that I would put upstroke escape picking with this lick into the solo. So we're going to kind of start out just the way that Billy plays this lick. I'm going to play 2 pickup notes into some improvisation over the chord changes to White House Blues, and then I'm going to see if I can throw that lick into the middle of the solo, just to put it into a spot that's a little different from how Billy used this lick. So you can see I managed to squeeze that lick into the changes to White House Blues on somewhat of an improvised solo there. Now you may be wondering, okay Hayes, that's really cool, you can play that fast, but how do I put this into my own playing? Step 1, work out patterns that you know are USX picking so that you can incorporate those into your playing as licks or standard vocabulary. This lick that's at the first few measures of Dust in a Baggie here is perfect material for that. But like I said, if you start on a downstroke on a downbeat and play any 4-note phrase that ascends or descends the strings, then you're safe. So work out a couple of those patterns and then try to fit them into solos or chord structures that you're already really comfortable with. The reason I chose White House Blues is because I know the melody to that tune really well, so I can pull off a fast, hot lick like Billy uses here, and then fill out the rest of the break with pillar tones or the melody notes from the original tune. I think that's a great way to kind of incorporate these new things into solos, and it could be a very useful tool for you so you don't feel too overwhelmed by this process of speed picking. So one thing that I might suggest is getting your guitar and practicing these patterns on 1 string only, but see if you can go as fast as you can with as little motion and tension in the right hand as possible. One thing that I really noticed is that my wrist wasn't able to move side to side so much this way for the USX picking, but I ended up having to use a lot of this doorknob turning motion or kind of jiggling motion that comes really from the entire top bone of your wrist here. So just to give you an example of that, here's what it looks like. One last thing you might want to check out too is on all of your downstrokes, do a rest stroke. I found that this is really good to kind of bounce off of that string that's just below the one you picked through to get into that upstroke. It allows you to go through the string with a little more force and weight in that wrist and then bounce back so you can get a really strong kind of tremolo pattern if you're trying to practice that speed picking on only 1 string. Okay, my friends, there you have it. The secret to Billy Strings' speed playing. Obviously, I couldn't cover everything that makes him a great fast guitar player in today's video, but I think if you experiment with this USX picking and that lick from Dust in a Baggie, you're gonna gain kind of a window into how Billy is able to pull off these blazing fast tempos. If you haven't had a chance, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button below if you enjoyed today's video. And if you want to support the channel and get access to things like PDFs of all the tab for our exercises, backing tracks, play-alongs, and monthly live Zoom calls with yours truly, go ahead and check out the link below in the description to the Guitar Club. Okay, my friend, don't go anywhere though. We've got some more great videos queued up for you right here.
Hayes Griffin. Very solid. I like that. Definitely had some good material there. some good info, very solid routine. Now that doesn't just apply to country either. That applies to metal, that applies to rock, it applies to almost any style of music you would want to play, but it just applies and can be used in so many different styles because the speed picking, that really is a good concept. The even number of notes, I saw one from Yngwie that was talking about 4-note, 6-note pattern, to just use this pattern, and you can and it helps you escape by doing that.
Yes, this applies as much to metalheads on electric as it does to acoustic guitar playing.
Yep.
What he was talking about at the end there of the wrist movement to get that speed, that's a really good point.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I would have loved to have seen is right after he did the is to just play that riff again from that angle and like do the whole thing from there. But same thing applies. I mean, you can see the motions, you can see the mechanics of how it works instead of being a whole big moving the arm up and down. And that was one that Victor Wooten went over in his groove workshop, talking about being able to, like, if he's going to play the same groove on bass, it might just be a 3-note groove that he's going to be playing for the next 12 minutes, let's say, and being able to do it just moving your hand back and forth, or just moving your whole arm back and forth, or just moving from the shoulder back and forth, like being able to do it from each position and have it sound consistent was something that he was big on, because that makes
well, and also recognizing where you're the most comfortable, where your speed is at its best.
Sure. But being able to play consistently from each position means that at any time, if you have a problem, like, somebody might say, I got a cut on my finger. I got a problem with my shoulder, whatever, like, any kind of problem somebody has, they'd be able to then compensate and play from a different position, but still get consistent tone and have it sound the same, or, the way that they want it to from any position. So good to be versatile in that way.
Yeah. So
good information, though.
Yeah, he was another new find. And yes, we did subscribe. There's a guitar club, Glenn. We need to find out more about that. Hayes
Let's
Griffin.
find out.
At Hayes Griffin on YouTube.
Very cool. And like I said, good information that applies across multiple genres. It's not it's not all bluegrass, even though it mentions bluegrass in the title. It applies just as much to metal as it does to anything else.
Yeah, and I love metal and I love bluegrass. And my love for metal, next Monday. Metal Monday's coming back.
The return of Metal Monday coming back at you. Nice. Mr. Jacobs.
Oh, he's been cooking.
And in the meantime, this has been Glenn and Tony from Talking Shh.
We talked as quietly as we could.
And we went a little bit over, but that's okay. I think they'll excuse us for going over a little bit. We had a lot of stuff to go.
Elon spanking me.
That's all right. We get by, man. We get it all done. But thanks, everybody, and we'll see you guys next week from us on Thursday.
To you.
Later.
Night, everyone.
Ambient noise, yeah.
So now you're grabbing some band lab clips.
Now for me, that would also be something where I would use like volume automation and like bring that from the bottom, like bring it in and then bring it back out.
And these are the kinds of sounds you can stretch. With this AI, like stretching it actually can be
cool. Oh, that was perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the right
I
spot.
didn't even notice 40. The texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way.